Chapter 893. Commandery Prince Qing? He's going there? Empress Dowager frowned. She really didn't like Chu Qing very much, but thinking of his family background, she felt a little pity for him. Of course, her pity couldn't be compared with Chu Liuchen's. Yes, he asked to go there. Because of the matter of the Su state, my uncle specially called him over. He repeatedly found the things of the Su state. I'm afraid that the Su state is really spying on us. Chu Liuchen said implicitly. Since Chu Qing wanted to go there, he meant to send him there. The remnants of the Su state were the most difficult to deal with, and the current opportunity was just right. Xiao Wanru looked at him silently and felt relieved. She had the same idea as Empress Dowager. As long as Chu Liuchen didn't go there, she didn't care. Did he go there alone? Empress Dowager asked. Please ask Ningyuan Army General to escort him. Chu Liuchen shook his head. Ningyuan Army General? Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice. She hadn't heard this name for a long time, and hearing it again seemed like a lifetime had passed. I'm relieved to have Ningyuan Army General with me. Since your imperial uncle has decided so, you can go and see them off at that time. However, your health has always been poor. If you really can't hold on, let Prince Yu and Prince Zhou go. The Empress Dowager's favoritism was obviously deviated from her words. His partiality was not just ordinary partiality. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, but she still liked Empress Dowager's partiality. Imperial grandmother, I've said many times that I've recovered. I'm fine. Even if I'm a little weaker than ordinary people, it won't threaten my life. Chu Liuchen said. Good, my grandson has recovered. He's fine. Empress Dowager said with a smile. Seeing Chu Liuchen's current appearance, she was relieved. Finally, the child was saved. For so many years, she was afraid that she would die before her son. She heard the bad news from Prince Chen's mansion in fear. Now the situation was the best. Thinking of this, Empress Dowager glanced at Xiao Wanru, who was sitting aside gently and extremely gentle. The more she looked at her, the more pleased she felt. It seemed that since Qin proposed to marry this girl, her health had been getting better and better. This girl was really Prince Chen's lucky star. Thinking of this, she found Xiao Wanru more pleasing to the eye. This girl was really Prince Chen's lucky star. Thinking of this, Empress Dowager and Xiao Wanru became more and more pleasing to the eye. When they returned to the mansion, it was almost time for dinner. After walking in the peony courtyard for a while and talking with the Empress Dowager, Xiao Wanru was really hungry. When the dinner was served, there were more of her favorite dishes, so she poured half a bowl of rice into the bowl. Xian Qing, after she, Su, Ti Wangs, Tian, Qin, she, Ti, Chu, Xiao Wanru readily agreed. Even if Chu Liuchen didn't say it, she would have suggested it. It was good for his health. Although Chu Liuchen was not as weak as she imagined, he still needed this way of keeping fit. Although Chu Liuchen was not as weak as I thought, he still needed to take care of his health. Xiao Wanru agreed readily. Xiao Wanru wanted to get rid of his hand, but he held it tightly, so she couldn't get rid of it for a while. Thinking of how he had lowered his noble body and naturally tidied up her clothes, her heart softened and she stopped getting rid of his hand. Chu Liuchen was immediately sensitive to Xiao Wanru's indulgence. He held her hand tighter and then walked out of the courtyard with Xiao Wanru. A group of servant girls and eunuchs followed them from a distance. After walking in silence for a while, Chu Liuchen looked sideways at her and asked with a smile, "Why don't you speak? Didn't you have a lot to ask before?" "Your Highness," Xiao Wanru said angrily. She did have a lot to ask, but when she could, she found that she couldn't start to ask at the moment. "Well, I won't ask." "Forget it." Chu Liuchen raised the corner of his mouth and said lazily, "Why did you go to the Su state?" Xiao Wanru rolled her eyes at him and asked. Some of the previous things were related to the Su state, and what we found out also involved Commandery Prince Qing. Now we can't investigate it anymore. Everything points to the Su state. Uncle is worried, so he wants to send an envoy to have a look. Chu Liuchen said casually. There seemed to be more than one thing related to the Su state. It seemed that someone had been secretly in touch with the Su state, but they couldn't find this person. Chu Qing could use this to ask for permission. Chu Qing was actually a person with a lot of stories. There was a trace of indiscernible deepness in his eyes. Fortunately, you didn't go. I have heard of the Sioux state. I heard that the Sioux state is very remote. Although it is a small country, there are some things in it that are very evil. You'd better not go there if you can. The small country in Nanjiang was actually nothing, but there were some things in such a small country that people in the Central Plains could not understand. Xiao Wanru had read this extremely strange thing in a book. It didn't seem to be true, but more like a legend of ghosts and monsters. But if it was just a legend of ghosts and monsters, it didn't seem to be true. Anyway, Xiao Wanru was very concerned about the Sioux state. Of course, it was also because Chu Luchen had almost died there in the last life. I know that you care about me going to the Sioux state, so I naturally won't go there. We are newlyweds. How can I bear to let Zhuozhua stay alone in the boudoir? Chu Liuchen's eyebrows fluttered, and he looked a little roguish in his handsome face, which was very different from his elegant and noble appearance in the past. Your Highness. Xiao Wanru blushed, glared at him and said, how could he say such words in front of others? Okay, I'll talk to you when there is no one around. Chu Luchen immediately understood Xiao Wanru's meaning and coaxed her. The doting look in his eyes was as clear as spring water. Xiao Wanru blushed again. How could such words be explained in this way? She couldn't help stamping her feet with hatred, and her heart couldn't help beating wildly. This guy was really getting more and more shameless now, and he was getting more and more offline. All right, I'll talk to you about proper business. In a few days I'll be sending them to the border. Chu Luchen knew that he couldn't tease her anymore. If he continued to tease her, she would really get angry out of embarrassment, so he stopped while he was ahead. Send them so far? Xiao Wanru gasped. She had thought that they would be sent to a place like the 10 Miles Pavilion outside the capital city. Yes, send them so far. It's uncertain whether the envoy can come back safely, so I have to leave someone there to keep an eye on them. Chu Luchen said indifferently. Is it dangerous to go on a mission? Xiao Wanru was stunned and widened her watery eyes. She immediately forgot her embarrassment and anger just now, and suddenly felt a little uneasy. It's definitely dangerous, but it's not necessarily bad. The Sioux state hasn't come to pay tribute for so many years, so it must be in a bad mood against us. But it's not certain. At least the Sioux state is still our vassal state, so it can't cause too much trouble. Chu Luchen said lightly with a trace of coldness in his shimmering eyes. Of course, there were some things that he could not tell Xiao Wanru. The Sioux kingdom had never been a peaceful factor, not to mention that the crown prince had yet to be decided. It seemed like the Sioux kingdom would intervene in this matter. In addition, there was another reason why Chu Luchen noticed Sioux country early, which was that some old ministers of the former dynasty had fled to Sioux country. Although Sioux country said that they would find all these people, after so many years, very few of them had been found, and they were scattered all over the place. It was said that there was a royal family in the previous dynasty. At that time, they also fled to the Sioux kingdom. At present, it was unknown whether he was buried in the Sioux country or colluded with the people of the Sioux country. Some of the things he did that day, of course, had his own plans in other aspects, but also in this aspect. Of course, this trip to the Sioux kingdom was also a beginning for him. His handsome eyes glanced at Xiao Wanru's concerned little face, and he slightly raised the corners of his mouth to show a smile. Since he wanted to protect Zhuozhua, he must not be trampled on. There were some things that he didn't care about before, but now he could make use of them. Xiao Wanru thought for a while, understood Chu Liuchen's meaning, and said in surprise, Your Highness, are you going to the border to prepare troops and put pressure on the Sioux kingdom so that they don't dare to act rashly? Was the situation in the Sioux kingdom so serious? Did it already need to prepare troops to show off? When they were in the Imperial palace just now, Chu Luchen and the Empress Dowager didn't say anything. The Empress Dowager should have thought that she just wanted to send him out of the capital city, but she didn't expect that Chu Luchen would send him to the border. With the Empress Dowager's character, how could she be willing to do that? Yes, I must go this time, but I need you to take care of Imperial Grandmother. If I go to the border, Imperial Grandmother should ask you to go to the Imperial Palace from time to time. When you go to the Imperial Palace, you only need to accompany Imperial Grandmother and don't go anywhere else. I'm not in the capital city, so I'm afraid that I might miss something and put you in danger. Chu Luchen stood still, looked down at Xiao Wanru softly, and said with deep affection in his eyes. Xiao Wanru also stood still, looked at Chu Luchen, and then took the initiative to lean against him and said softly, "Your Highness, be careful. I will be in the mansion, and nothing will happen. As for the Imperial Palace, Imperial Grandmother is also there, so I will be more careful." She did that to reassure Chu Luchen and also to make herself vigilant. Chu Liuchen's trip would probably attract a lot of people secretly. If he came back victorious in the future, it would be the first credit, so there were many more people targeting him than before. If there is anything you can't solve, wait for me to come back and deal with it. Remember that you are Princess Qin, so you don't need to give in to others too much. In the Imperial Palace, except for Imperial Grandmother, you don't need to care about others. Chu Luchen snorted coldly and said with some displeasure, "Yes, I will not let down the reputation of Prince Chen's mansion." Xiao Wanru couldn't help laughing. She knew that her overly vigilant words made him unhappy. Prince Chen had always been arrogant in the Imperial Palace, so he couldn't bear to see her timid. He was afraid that she would be bullied, so he didn't dare to say it out. The smile at the bottom of her eyes froze. Since she had decided to be with him, she would be with him for the rest of her life. No matter how big the storm was, she was willing to bear it with him. Okay, remember not to let others bully you. If someone schemed against you, I will leave a secret guard for you. If you directly meet the Empress, don't worry. Just go to Imperial Grandmother. Chapter 894. Chu Luchen instigated with a bit of arrogance and fierceness, "If you can't do it, I'll avenge you when I come back. Whoever bullies you, I'll kill him." Yeah, I got it. Xiao Wanru pushed him with a smile. With this push, the fierceness on his face disappeared, and he became lazy again. The two of them chatted as they walked. Seeing that it was getting late, they returned to the main courtyard. After sitting down in the room, Xiao Wanru got up, went to the inner room, and took out a small ornamental box from it. Before she could say anything, she saw Chu Liuchen's face change. He suddenly stood up, picked up the ornamental box that he had just put down, and threw it out of the room. "Your Highness." Xiao Wanru was startled. Chu Luchen had never been so angry in front of her. His handsome eyes were gloomy without a trace of warmth. "If you see this person again in the future, just ignore her." Chu Luchen was not polite at all, and a trace of disgust appeared on his cold face. "Your Highness, know her?" Xiao Wanru asked. Chu Liuchen's look showed that it was concubine Lan who gave her something, but she didn't know why Chu Luchen was so angry. Was there any secret about the emperor's former favorite concubine? Otherwise, she and Chu Luchen, who had nothing to do with each other, would not have any relationship with each other, let alone make Chu Luchen so angry. It seemed that she had stabbed Chu Luchen in the heart. "Of course I know her. She is unaccountably solicitous. Zhuozhuo, you don't have to pay attention to her." Chu Luchen sneered, and his eyes were full of coldness with a bloodthirsty aura. "Okay, I'll be careful to avoid her when I enter the palace in the future," Xiao Wanru said softly and meekly. Xiao Wanru's words made Chu Luchen feel a little better. He nodded at once and said seriously, "Since she is in the palace, you can't avoid her even if you want to. Just ignore her. No matter what she says, don't care." Xiao Wanru could understand some of his words, but she couldn't understand some of them. Hearing Chu Liuchen's words, today's meeting in the Peony Garden did not seem to be a coincidence. Thinking of the palace maids they met along the way and the direction they nodded, it seemed that there were indeed traces to be found. How could a palace maid in dire straits have such great ability to investigate his whereabouts, especially when he came from the Empress Dowager's Palace of Benevolent Peace? "She will probably meet you again in the future. If you don't want to see her, turn around and leave," Chu Luchen said again. "All right, I'll do as you say." Xiao Wanru nodded, and a trace of doubt flashed across her watery eyes. She felt more and more confused about this matter. However, it seemed that Chu Luchen didn't want to talk about concubine Lan. He was so disgusted that he didn't even want to mention it. Of course, she wouldn't force Chu Luchin to mention it. She just needed to stay away from concubine lawn in the future. On the day we return home, this prince will take you to the streets to pick some jewelry. Chu Luchin calmed down and reached out to hold Xiao Wanru's slightly cold hand. After walking for a while, his hand was very cold. Your Highness, are you going to take me to the streets? Xiao Wanru said in surprise, regardless of the fact that her hand was still held by Chu Luchin. Seeing that the two of them were so intimate, the maids and Xiao Xuanzi had already left quietly. Of course. Chu Luchin nodded and showed a smile on his face. He was still an elegant and gentle young man, as if the cold and gloomy person she had seen just now was not him. Xiao Wanru had long been accustomed to his change of face. It was indeed not concubine lawn. In the past, it might be more convenient for her to go out. But now she was Prince Chen's wife and was newly married, so it was not easy for her to go out. It was great that Chu Luchin could take her out. Thank you, Your Highness. Xiao Wanru broke away from his hand and bowed deeply to Chu Luchin. Chu Luchin was also in a good mood. He reached out to pull her up and asked with a smile, "Isn't it too insincere to thank me in such a way?" The matter that had been pressing on his heart had been pressing on him for so many years. Every time he thought of it, he had never been happy. But now when he saw Xiao Wanru's teasing smile, his heart felt warm. He had always known what he needed to care about and what he didn't care about. He immediately pushed aside all the previous frustrations. Now he was not only alone, but also had a person he missed. Moreover, this person happened to be in love with him, so there were some things that he didn't need to take too much to heart. What do you want, Your Highness? Xiao Wanru looked up at the affection in his eyes, which almost overflowed with love. She suddenly blushed and turned her face away uncomfortably. Chu Luchin leaned over and whispered in Xiao Wanru's ear. Xiao Wanru was so angry that her face seemed to be burning. Not only her face, but also her neck and ears seemed to have a fever. This person looked sanctimonious, but in fact he really had no bottom line. Xiao Wanru spat at him in a low voice, turned around and walked into the inner room. Chu Luchin leisurely patted his sleeves. Of course, at this time, he couldn't push her too hard. He had to take it slow. Xiao Wanru had prepared the gift list early. Xiao Wanru had read the gift list in advance. The gift list was very rich and detailed. Different people gave gifts according to different identities. No matter how picky a person was, he or she could not find anything wrong with the gift list. Because there were no other masters in the mansion, the young couple didn't get up early. After breakfast, it was almost time, so they got in the carriage of Prince Chen's mansion and went to Marquis Xing's mansion together. They took a big circle all the way. When they arrived at the gate of Marquis Xing's mansion, Old Madam had already waited at the gate with a group of people. Marquis Xing would not pay so much attention to Prince Chen's identity, but Old Madam and Marquis Xing had to curry favor with Prince Chen, who was the most favored and trusted by the Emperor and the Empress Dowager. What was more, Marquis Xing's mansion was not the Duke Xing's mansion that had been favored by the Emperor in the past. Chu Luchin got out of the carriage first, and then helped Xiao Wanru get out together. Xiao Wanru was not tall, but the carriage of Prince Chen's mansion was extremely wide and tall. When she finally landed, Chu Luchin also pulled her sleeves hard, for fear that she would fall. It was obvious that he was afraid that she would fall. Old Madam and Xiao Jing looked at each other calmly and knew what was going on. Prince Chen was really good to Xiao Wanru. At this time, Old Madam also regretted it. If she had known that Prince Chen really cared about Xiao Wanru, she shouldn't have been indifferent to Xiao Wanru and even didn't support her when there was something wrong. Now it was not so easy for her to support Marquis Xing's mansion. Greetings, Your Highness. Greetings, Your Highness. But it was not the time to regret it. Old Madam restrained her thoughts and stepped forward to bow with a smile. Chu Luchin said lightly, "Rise?" Although he looked gentle, there was a hint of indifference in his tone, which made Xiao Jing frown secretly. He really wanted to ask Prince Chen for something, but it seemed that Prince Chen probably wouldn't agree to it easily. Xiao Wanru bowed deeply to Old Madam. Even though she was now Prince Chen, she was still Old Madam's junior, so she had to bow, especially when she returned home today. Well, it's windy here. Don't talk here. Let's go in together. Old Madam smiled and reached out to pull Xiao Wanru intimately. Xiao Wanru stepped back and happened to avoid old madam's hand. Then she smiled slightly, as if her behavior just now was just a misunderstanding. Old madam's face suddenly became very ugly, but then she showed a kind smile and walked in first. At this time, she couldn't be angry with Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru raised her long eyelashes and was surprised that old madam could bear it. Her behavior just now was a disgrace to old madam, but she didn't expect that old madam could bear it so calmly. Her eyes blinked twice to hide the deepness at the bottom of her eyes. She now knew old madam very well. She was a person who would not get up early without benefits. Since she bowed to her, she must have something else to ask for, but she didn't know what it was. However, she was not in a hurry. She just needed to wait and see what she would say next. Chu Luchen followed Xiao Jing and Xiao Huan to the front yard, while Xiao Wanru followed old madam and other womenfolk to old madam's residence in the backyard. Everyone sat down according to the guest and the host. Xiao Wanru naturally sat in the first seat of the guest. Now people would only call her Princess Qin instead of the fifth miss of Marquis Xing's mansion. As soon as a woman got married, her identity changed along with her husband. Old madam sat in the main seat, and Zhao Shiran sat beside her with a smile. On the other side, the third madam also struggled to stand up. On one side of the third madam were the third miss and the fourth Mississippi. The second miss, Xiao Jie, sat beside Zhao Shiran with her head lowered. It seemed that Xiao Jie had been keeping her head lowered like this since Xiao Wanru came in. She was very well behaved. Xiao Jie, who was the noisiest in the past, was now well behaved after being locked up. In fact, Xiao Wanru didn't believe it. Xiao Caihuan also lowered her head. Occasionally, when she raised her head to look at Xiao Wanru, there was a little shame in her eyes. Xiao Kailing was the happiest one. She got along well with Xiao Wanru now. She was really a little reluctant to let Xiao Wanru get married so early. However, it was a matter of the royal family, which couldn't be controlled by a little girl from an aristocratic family. Wanru, how does Prince Qin treat you? Old madam looked at Xiao Wanru with a smile. Seeing that Xiao Wanru's face was still ruddy, her skin was as white as snow, and she didn't look dispirited at all, she knew that Xiao Wanru had a good life in Prince Chen's mansion. So she just asked a polite question. This was a question that female elders must ask when they returned home, which also showed that the elders valued and didn't trust women. Very good. Xiao Wanru said softly with a light smile, just like all the new brides, with a touch of shyness, which was very pleasant and made her look more charming and charming. Xiao Jie stole a glance at Xiao Wanru with jealousy in her eyes. Why did Xiao Wanru get all the good things but not her? She was the one who was born in Marquis Xing's mansion, so she couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as a foreign servant girl. That's great. You're married now. Among the sisters, only you're married to a man that grandma can rest assured about. If the other sisters can do the same, even if I die, I'll close my eyes and mouth. Old madam sighed and said. Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart and thought to herself, here it comes. As expected, they are waiting for me here. End of this chapter. Chapter 895. Xiao Wanru picked up the handkerchief and gently pressed it on her delicate little face. She looked up with a smile and said, my sisters will marry well in the future. Grandma, you don't have to worry about them. Grandma, fifth sister, is right. It will only be better in the future. How can it not be good? My sisters will also marry good families. You can rest assured. Zhao Shiran, who had always been so resourceful, hurriedly said with a smile after hearing old madam's words. She asked someone to walk behind old madam, pick up the knocker placed aside, and gently knock old madam's back. Her movements were extremely natural. Seeing the satisfaction in old madam's eyes, Xiao Wanru's eyes darkened. Zhao Shiran was really smart. It had only been a few days, but old madam had changed her opinion of her. It seemed that Zhao Shiran had also intervened in the following matter. Old madam would never be good to others for no reason. If it was useless, it would be useless to please her. Yes, mother. You are so healthy. How can you say such words? It makes me really uncomfortable. The third madam said with a smile. The smile on her face was a little forced, but she didn't slow down. After so many things had happened, the third madam had been able to bear the responsibility, but now she couldn't bear it anymore. Everything in the mansion was slowly transferred to Zhao Shiran. It was obvious that old madam intended to accompany Zhao Shiran. Regarding this matter, the third madam didn't dare to have any doubts. Originally, the master of the backyard was old madam, and she could take whoever she liked. I'm so old, so I don't ask for anything. I just hope that you brothers and sisters can live a good life and support each other in the future. Then I will do anything. Old madam sighed again, reached out to rub her forehead, and said with infinite sadness, "What happened to second miss and third miss?" Speaking of this, old madam sighed and couldn't go on. It was obvious that she had encountered something sad and didn't know how to speak for a moment. Xiao Wenru didn't answer and just looked at the handkerchief in her hand calmly, as if she didn't understand the other meaning of old madam's words and didn't make it clear. Or in other words, she was not curious about old madam's unfinished thoughts. He seemed to be in a daze. Old madam stole a glance at Xiao Wenru and saw her sitting there like a wooden figure. She was so angry. As expected, Xiao Wenru was not raised by her, so she was not considerate to her. She had made it so obvious, but Xiao Wenru didn't even ask for her opinion. If it were first miss who encountered this kind of thing, she would definitely stand on her side. Of course, the first maid couldn't help her now. Xiao Yenru had secretly sent a message to her in the Imperial Palace, so she naturally couldn't bother her with this kind of thing. At this time, old madam could only think of Xiao Wenru. However, Xiao Wenru didn't say anything, and old madam felt ashamed to say it herself. Glancing at Yu Shiran, who was standing aside, Zhao Shiran immediately understood. He looked up at Xiao Wenru with a smile and said, "Fifth sister, there is one thing that Grandma is worried about. I don't know if I can trouble you to inquire about it and give our mansion a definite reply, lest Grandma can't eat well and sleep well during this period of time and be exhausted." Xiao Wenru slowly raised her head and glanced at old madam, who seemed to want to stop Zhao Shiran from speaking but didn't have time. Xiao Wenru slightly raised the corners of her mouth and said, "First sister-in-law, you're too polite. But what can I do to help Grandma? Grandma doesn't ask second uncle to do it, but asks me, a newly married girl, to do it?" Her rhetorical question was a little impolite and even a little tough. Zhao Shiran didn't expect that Xiao Wenru would not give face to old madam in front of so many people, so she directly retorted. After being stunned for a moment, she blushed. After all, she had just married into Marquis Xing's mansion. In front of so many people, she felt a little embarrassed to be retorted by Xiao Wenru indifferently. "Fifth miss, what do you mean?" Old madam was the first one who couldn't help but put down the teacup in her hand heavily. "You are also a daughter of Marquis Xing's mansion who got married. Are you going to ignore your mother's family after getting married?" "Grandma, it seems that you want me to choose between my mother's family and my husband's family, right?" Xiao Wenru had expected old madam's sudden cold attitude, so she raised her eyes and said unhurriedly. Her words almost made old madam vomit blood. What did she mean by choosing between her mother's family and her husband's family? Her husband's family was the royal family. Could she say that she had to take care of her mother's family and ignore her husband's family? If the Empress Dowager in the Imperial Palace knew about it, she would definitely punish Marquis Xing's mansion severely. "Fifth sister, how could Grandma mean this? I just want you to pass on a message." Seeing that the situation was not good, Zhao Shiran hurriedly cleared up her embarrassment and explained. "What if I don't want to?" Xiao Wenru said coldly. They couldn't go on talking about it. Xiao Zhizhu, who was sitting aside, moved her body as if she wanted to stand up and speak, but she didn't dare to and still lowered her head. "Fifth sister, it's really not a big deal. I just want you to help me ask a question, or rather, I want Prince Chen to pass on a message, not to others, but to Commandery Prince Qing." Zhao Shiran had come to his senses and said with a smile, looking more and more amiable. Old madam originally wanted to give Xiao Wenru a warning by returning to the fifth Miss Xiao's family. Now it seemed that the former fifth Miss Xiao, who was now Princess Chen, was not afraid of a warning at all. Zhao Shiran thought it was better to play the family card at this time. After saying that, she secretly glanced at old madam and sneered in her heart. She didn't know what was going on in Marquis Xing's mansion. Instead of flattering Princess Chen, they seemed to want to plot against her. If it was easy to plot against Princess Chen, how could she fail at that time? Instead of playing the family card when returning to the 5th Miss Xiao's family, they showed such a bad look. No wonder Duke Xing's mansion wanted to become Marquis Xing's mansion. If they couldn't see clearly what they should do and what they shouldn't do, how could they prosper? What's the matter, Commander Prince Qing? Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. She had already understood what was going on, but she still asked lightly, with her eyes falling on Xiao Jie in the corner of the room. Why hasn't Commander Prince Qing come to our mansion to propose marriage? He promised to give us an explanation for what happened in the Imperial Palace, but he hasn't come to our mansion yet. Grandma is very anxious. She originally wanted to ask father to go out and talk about it, but if a woman takes the initiative in this kind of thing, she will lose face eventually. So she thought of Prince Chen. Prince Chen and Commander Prince Qing are brothers, so we can talk about it in private. Zhao Shiran said with a flattering smile. Her words were extremely polite, and she also told her that it was inconvenient for Marquis Xing's mansion to lobby for her. She didn't hide anything and seemed to be extremely frank. Zhao Shiran deserved to be the eldest lineal daughter of Minister Zhao's mansion. Her words were watertight and quite reasonable. Every word she said was reasonable. If Xiao Wanru still refused, she would appear to be petty. In addition, what old madam said in anger before it was a piece of cake for her to say that she had forgotten her roots in her current identity. Chu Qing and Chu Luchen were brothers, so it didn't take much effort for them to pass on a message. However, these were all on the surface. Although they were both the sons of the late emperor, they were of different importance. Chu Liuchen's identity and status were far higher than Chu Qing's. If Chu Luchen passed on the message, even if Chu Qing had some other ideas before, he had to give Chu Luchen face at this time and come to Marquis Xing's mansion to propose marriage. Old Madam was good at scheming, and so was Zhao Shiran. Of course, compared with Old Madam's attitude, Zhao Shiran's attitude was much more amiable and amiable. Grandma, do you mean to let Commander Prince Qing marry my second sister? I heard that Commander Prince Qing has been engaged, so I'm afraid that he can't marry my second sister as his legal wife. Xiao Wanru asked with a faint look in her eyes after hearing her words. Father and grandmother will tell Commander Prince Qing about it. Fifth sister, don't worry. I just want Commander Prince Qing to take the initiative to go to Marquis's mansion once. Zhao Shiran said vaguely and didn't say whether it was Xiao Jie. However, it did sound like a trivial matter to ask Chu Qing to come here. I'm afraid he can't do it recently. According to His Highness, Commander Prince Qing seems to have an errand, so he may not be able to come to our mansion at this time. Anyway, this matter can't be rushed now. After Commander Prince Qing is relieved of his current errand, I'll ask His Highness to go to Commander Prince Qing's mansion. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said seriously. Chu Qing was going to the Sioux state, and he probably wouldn't come back within 1 or 2 months. Old Madam was not in a hurry before, but now she was in a hurry, which made her have new doubts. Hearing Xiao Wanru's words, Old Madam couldn't help saying sternly, Grandma, why can't I do it? Is it necessary to be in such a hurry? Xiao Wanru asked slowly with an indifferent look on her face. Old Madam swallowed a mouthful of saliva, suppressed the rising anger in her heart, and made herself look kinder. Xiao Wanru's words just now made her clearly realize that Xiao Wanru's current identity was no longer the 5th miss of Marquis Xing's mansion. Even she had to bow to Xiao Wanru if she didn't have the identity of an elder. Your sister is old. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid that something bad will happen. Old Madam forced a smile and tried to make herself look kind and kind. Wait a little longer. Is there any change? Commander Prince Qing is concentrating on his work at this time, so he definitely has no interest in marriage. Xiao Wanru said unhurriedly. Old Madam's attitude didn't affect her at all. Xiao Wanru had long been disappointed with Marquis Xing's mansion and Old Madam, so she naturally wouldn't have any expectations, because no matter how they treated her, Xiao Wanru wouldn't care. In fact, it's not an important change. It's just, 5th sister, I won't treat you as an outsider. Let me tell you frankly, there are also other mansions proposing marriage. Their conditions are not bad, but they are not as good as Commandery Prince Qing's. I want to weigh it carefully. Only after Commandery Prince Qing expresses his opinion can we let go of this marriage. Otherwise, what should we do if both sides fail? Zhao Xiran immediately found the most suitable answer for the current situation and said with a smile. Proposing marriage? Whose family is it? Xiao Wanru asked in surprise. She really didn't expect this reason. Was it Xiao Jie's or Xiao Zaiwan's? At this time, such a person suddenly appeared. It was really strange that this person was chosen at this time. End of this chapter. Chapter 896. Remember in 1 second, 800 $say, Net Zhao Xiran smiled awkwardly and said, in fact, it's not particularly powerful. But you've seen the situation of my second and third sisters. It's best to be able to find a son-in-law. After all, they know each other well. It's much better than being in the dark. Zhao Xiran smiled awkwardly and said. His words were almost the same as not saying anything, but Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Catching a son-in-law before the imperial examinations? In her previous life, she had caught a son-in-law before the imperial examinations. Could this so-called catching a son-in-law before the imperial examinations be because she had taken a fancy to that young master Yan Shi? In the last life, she and Yan Shi had obviously been framed. Now she had taken a fancy to Yan Shi or had other plans. No matter how she looked at it, it was not simple. Have you taken a fancy to a scholar? Xiao Wanru asked calmly and glanced at the faces of several people in the room. It hasn't been decided yet. In fact, I have taken a fancy to a few families, and they also have the same idea. But the girl of our Marquis's mansion can't really marry a man in white. We have to wait until he passes the imperial examination. However, we have to pay close attention to whether Commandery Prince Qing's mansion will give us an answer now. If Commandery Prince Qing's mansion really doesn't like us, we can give up the marriage. Zhao Xiran said helplessly. Xiao Wanru understood the meaning of his words. Chu Qing had been hanging around Marquis Xing's mansion. He did not say whether he would marry or not. Before he gave a clear answer, Marquis Xing's mansion could not make another engagement. No matter what, Chu Qing was a descendant of the royal family. Moreover, it was related to the late emperor, so they had to be more careful sometimes. Moreover, it happened in the imperial palace at that time, and many people knew it. If Marquis Xing's mansion wanted to regret it, it would not be so easy, so they must give Chu Qing an answer. However, this statement was obviously different from the previous plan of Marquis Xing's mansion. Could it be that something happened in the past few days that made Marquis Xing's mansion change their attitude? Second uncle, didn't you ask someone else to ask Commandery Prince Qing for help? Xiao Wanru asked. A woman should be reserved. She didn't believe that Xiao Jing, with his mentality, would take the initiative to ask first. Now he put the blame on her, but it was more to take advantage of Chu Liuchen's influence to put pressure on Chu Qing quietly, so that he had to show his attitude to Marquis Xing's mansion. Compared with Chu Liuchen, Chu Qing, the son of the late emperor, was really inconspicuous. Father has asked someone to inquire about it before, but Commandery Prince Qing didn't tell the truth. Grandma has no choice but to think of you. If this matter is delayed, it will ruin your sister's marriage. It's okay if you don't like the girls of our Marquis Xing's mansion, but what should we do if you keep delaying it? Missing this year's spring quarter examinations would be a matter of 3 years. My sisters are all grown up and can't wait that long. Zhao Xiran said sincerely. Although this eldest sister-in-law had just married into the Marquis Xing's mansion, she had done a good job wholeheartedly. Xiao Wanru blinked and her eyes fell on Xiao Jie. Xiao Jie didn't react until now, as if this matter was someone else's business and had nothing to do with her. She still sat there with her head down. Xiao Zaihuan's reaction was a little uneasy. She stole a glance at Xiao Wanru and then at Zhao Xiran, and then lowered her head. So Xiao Jie's marriage should have been arranged. Xiao Zaihuan, not Xiao Jie. Xiao Jie's marriage should have been arranged. Thinking of what Xiao Jie had said at the beginning, a trace of sadness flashed across her eyes. Xiao Jing had given up Xiao Jie's marriage to Xiao Shui, and he seemed to be very confident about it. It seemed that both sides had agreed. Xiao Jing could make Xiao Jie, or give up her marriage to Xiao Zaihuan. Given his character, this marriage should be better than Commandery Prince Qing's, so this person must also be from the royal family. Among the sons of the royal family, there were only Prince Yu, Prince Zhou, and Prince Xian. There was also Prince Cheng, who couldn't escape from them. They didn't know who Xiao Jing had made friends with and whose man he became, so he had the reason and opportunity to send his daughter to the royal family. Thinking of this, he didn't show any panic on his face. After listening to Zhao Xiran's words, he said unhurriedly, "Since this matter is so urgent, I'll talk to Prince Chen later, but I really don't know whether Prince Chen is willing to talk about it or not. It seems that there is no contact between our prince and Commandery Prince Qing. It doesn't matter whether it can be done or not. As long as Prince Chen can help us talk about it, we can't delay my sister's marriage. Fifth sister is married now, but the youngest one is married first. The other sisters also have to find someone else as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be unpleasant to say." Zhao Xiran said and continued to speak with sincerity, as if everything he said was from the bottom of his heart. Old Madam was very satisfied with her position. After marrying into Marquis Xing's mansion, she would be a member of Marquis Xing's mansion. She always mentioned Marquis Xing's mansion. Old Madam was very satisfied with her position. This granddaughter-in-law was not disgusting. She could tell from her words that she was good and capable. There was no one in charge of the backyard of Marquis Xing's mansion now. Old Madam wanted to take charge of everything, but because she was old, she was powerless. If it weren't for the previous things, Old Madam would be wholeheartedly satisfied with this granddaughter-in-law. But now, she had to wait and see. Your sisters are in a special situation now, so I can't help them. You are now Princess Chen and the daughter of Marquis Xing's mansion. In the future, your bones will be broken and tendons will be connected. If your sisters get well, they can also help each other in the future. It's a good thing for you and them." Old Madam said gently. "That's right. Fifth sister is now Princess Chen. I haven't congratulated you yet." Zhao Xiran was very good at dealing with people. She deliberately bowed sideways and said with a smile. Xiao Wanru slightly tilted her body to avoid her bow and said with a smile, "First sister-in-law, you are too polite." "Well, don't talk about these boring things. Wanru, just keep it in mind. I heard that you went to the Empress Dowager's palace before. Did the Empress Dowager say anything?" Old Madam said with a smile, looking like a kind grandmother who cared about her little granddaughter. This was a sign that they had finished talking about business and could talk about some other things. Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She talked about some things in the Empress Dowager's palace at that time and casually answered a few questions. Since there was no business to talk about, everyone talked enthusiastically. After a while, someone came from outside to invite them to sit down. The table was divided into men's table and women's table, which were placed in a room and slightly separated by a screen. It was both lively and respectful to men and women. Chu Liuchen he didn't drink. In addition, the two princes fought because of drinking before, so Marquis Xing's mansion didn't have the courage to let Chu Liuchen drink, so they could only work hard on the dishes. However, even if they worked hard, they couldn't be lively in front of Prince Chen, who was indifferent, gentle, but actually aloof. Even if Xiao Jing was slick and had been leading Chu Liuchen to talk outside, he just felt embarrassed. Prince Chen didn't appreciate it and didn't want to be close to Xiao Jing. Xiao Wanru sat inside and ate very calmly. She was also extremely embarrassed. As a new bride, Zhao Xiran was too embarrassed to say anything in this situation. The meal was extremely peaceful. After the meal, Xiao Wanru went back to her Piaoyun courtyard to rest for a while Chu Liuchen went to the guest room prepared for him by Marquis Xing's mansion. Originally, Chu Liuchen was going to go to the Piaoyun courtyard, but Xiao Jing kept persuading him, as if he had something to say to Chu Liuchen in private, so Xiao Wanru went back to the Piaoyun courtyard by herself. When she arrived at the Piaoyun courtyard and sat down, Qing came to report to her. "Your Highness, after you got on the bridal sedan chair that day, second miss didn't go out. Instead, she went to the Marquis's courtyard. There were guards outside the courtyard, so I didn't dare to get too close to it. However, after staying inside for about 10 minutes, second miss left the marquis's courtyard in tears. After that, I stayed for a while and saw the mark leave with her. Did it mean that Xiao Jing was the cause of Xiao Jie's unusual behavior at that time? Or Xiao Jing also found Xiao Jie's abnormality and specially went to ask about it? What happened later? Xiao Wanru picked up the tea at hand, took a sip, and said unhurriedly, "There should be more to this matter." It was really strange that Xiao Jie didn't even dare to raise her head to look at her today. Later, I came back and continued to follow Second Mississippi. At that time, Second Miss had returned to her courtyard and looked very peaceful. I heard that she was going to go back to the Buddha Hall. The servant girl was preparing some daily necessities for her. The courtyard was a little busy and there were a lot of people coming and going, so I kept watching. In the evening, I saw an old maid come over. I remembered that this old maid was from the outer courtyard. Qing had been in Marquis Xing's mansion for a period of time. Moreover, she had a photographic memory. As long as she saw this person, she would always have some memories. Although she didn't often see an old maid from the outer courtyard, she had at least seen her before. I saw Second Miss go into the main room to talk and drive other people out of the room. After talking for a while, Second Miss left. I felt that the old maid was strange, so I deliberately followed her. I didn't expect to see Wang Xingxue. Qing said in disgust. The people in the Piaoyun courtyard really didn't like Wang Xingxue. Wang Xingxue? Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. She got in touch with him. Yes, it's Wang Xingxue. He hid and talked with the old maid for a long time. Later, Wang Xingxue seemed to leave in anger. Qing reported and finally came to the conclusion, Second Miss's abnormality that day should have something to do with Wang Xingxue. Xiao Wanru nodded. Although Xiao Jing was also very suspicious, in that case, if something happened, Xiao Jing would also be ashamed. Wang Xingxue was indeed the most likely person to do something with Xiao Jie. Chapter 897. Is Wang Xingxue here today? Xiao Wanru said with cold eyes. Xiao Jing wanted to make use of Wang Xingxue to do something, but she couldn't tolerate Wang Xingxue. I went to inquire about it this morning. It was said that Wang Xingxue came here and seemed to be looking for Child Yen. The two of them seemed to have quarreled before. Qing reported. She also knew that her master would definitely ask about Wang Xingxue, so she had gone to the outer courtyard to inquire about it. Today was the day when Xiao Wanru returned to her mansion. The servant girl of the Piaoyun courtyard went to the door to see if Xiao Wanru was there, which was not eye-catching. Quarreled? Xiao Wanru's eyes turned cold, and she immediately thought of her warning to Yan Shi before. It seemed that Yan Shi had found something. She didn't see Wang Xingxue at the dinner table just now, so she thought that Wang Xingxue was not here today. Now thinking about it, Wang Xingxue had quarreled with Marquis Xing's mansion, so how could he be allowed to attend the dinner to arouse her suspicion? After all, what had happened to Wang Yishu at that time almost made Marquis Xing's mansion fall out with Wang Xingxue. Now Wang Xingxue could still come to Marquis Xing's mansion, which could be explained by his appearance. But if he was invited to the dinner table, it meant that he continued to be on good terms with him. It was impossible for her cheap second uncle to do such a thing to arouse her suspicion. It seemed that Wang Xingxue and Xiao Jie had intended to frame her up this time, but Xiao Jie was afraid and didn't dare to do it. Xiao Jing knew about it and scolded her. Qing, keep an eye on Child Yen. If Wang Xingxue leaves, inform me. Xiao Wanru said. She did want to see Yan Shi. Today's visit was an opportunity, and it would be difficult to find such an opportunity in the future. She didn't have much time, so she couldn't wait passively. If Wang Xingxue doesn't leave then, find a way to drive him away. Brother Yan, I really went to Miss Xiao's place that day because I was looking for you. Since I came and saw Miss Xiao sad there, I sat for a while longer and comforted her. It's really not what you think. Wang Xingxue sat opposite Yan Shi with a frown and a bitter look on his face, looking like he had been wronged and was speechless. Yan Shi, who was sitting opposite him, was holding a book in her hand and reading it very seriously. She nodded non-committally at Wang Xingxue's words, but did not say anything else. Brother Yan, are you listening to me? Wang Xingxue was anxious. He reached out and pulled Yan Shi's sleeve a few times. Yan Shi's hand was pulled down. She frowned and had to look up at Wang Xingxue. Brother Wang and Miss Xiao really don't need to explain to me. I just met Miss Xiao by chance. After seeing injustice on the road, I shouldn't get too close to her. After all, she is also a lady. As for Brother Wang's love for Miss Xiao, it is also human nature. Yan Shi said indifferently. Brother Yan, why don't you believe what I said? I do have such an idea, but the person Miss Xiao likes is you. I also regret it. If I had saved Miss Xiao at that time, there wouldn't be so many troubles now. Unfortunately, Miss Xiao. Wang Xingxue said here and let out a long sigh, feeling endless grievances. A gentle and graceful lady is a gentleman's desire. Yan Shi's expression became unhappy. He knocked on the book on the table with his hand and said, Brother Wang, please be careful with your words. Miss Xiao is after all an unmarried lady. It is too frivolous for us to say such words. The so-called liking or disliking could be regarded as a personal affair, before marriage was discussed. Yan Shi thought to herself. Yan Shi didn't feel that he had any personal feelings for this Miss Xiao, and he didn't want Wang Xingxue to pull him and Miss Xiao together from time to time. Yan Shi also regretted saving this Miss Xiao. If he had known that this Miss Xiao was such a tearful and irresolute person, he really wouldn't have helped her at that time. It was not that he looked down on this Miss Xiao, but that Miss Xiao's attitude made him very unhappy. He was born in a family of generals, and all the women he had seen in the past had some strength of character. He had never seen such a delicate woman, who seemed to be full of tears if he said something wrong. He couldn't bear the affectionate look in her eyes. Even though he was a scholar now, deep in his bones he still had the temperament of a military general. He really did not like Miss Xiao's appearance. Moreover, a woman should be dignified and graceful, natural and unrestrained. Miss Xiao's appearance was inferior. She did not look like a girl from a decent family. What fifth Miss Xiao said that day made him think for a long time, and then he suddenly went to Miss Xiao's courtyard. In the past, it was Wang Xingxue who came to find him, and then they went to see Miss Xiao's recent situation together. But this time, Yan Shi suddenly went there without informing anyone, so he saw a scene that surprised him. Wang Xingxue was also there. Not only was he there, but he was also talking very intimately with Miss Xiao. Their conversation was also full of smiles, which was quite different from his usual appearance. Yan Shi was not stupid. What's more, with Xiao Wanru's words, he changed his face on the spot, flicked his sleeves, and left. Miss Xiao cried and fell to the ground behind him, but he didn't pay attention to her. Wang Xingxue didn't expect that Yan Shi not only suddenly appeared, but also rushed in, so he couldn't react for a moment. Seeing Yan Shi leave, he hurriedly chased after her, only to see that Yan Shi had boarded the carriage and left. He was so anxious that he didn't care about Miss Xiao inside and also called a carriage to chase after her to Marquis Xing's mansion. However, Yan Shi didn't want to listen to his explanation and ignored him. As a result, Wang Xingxue came to Marquis Xing's mansion to persuade Yan Shi to confess his innocence whenever he was free these days. Brother Yan, I know it's against the rules, but it's just the two of us now, so it's not a big deal. Miss Xiao only treats me as a big brother, so she jokes with me, but the only person she truly cares about is Brother Yan. It's Brother Yan's good fortune to have such a confidant. It would be great if I had such a great fortune. Wang Xingxue sighed and said helplessly, Brother Wang, don't mention this matter in the future. Miss Xiao's matter has nothing to do with me in the future. If you are willing to be Miss Xiao's brother and sister, you can go ahead. It has nothing to do with me. Brother Wang, you don't have to come to talk to me again. The Imperial examination in spring is coming soon, and I can't be distracted by other things now. Brother Wang, please. Yan Shi pointed to the book in front of him rudely and asked him to leave. Not only Miss Xiao's behavior in the past, but also she and Wang Xingxue met privately in the room without a servant girl to serve her. It could be seen that Miss Xiao was extremely inappropriate. After thinking it through, he recalled the bits and pieces of the past and always felt that he had been schemed against. This feeling was very uncomfortable, so Yan Shi naturally didn't want to be too close to Miss Xiao. Whether Miss Xiao was good or bad, it had nothing to do with him. He should prepare for his Imperial examination in spring. Brother Yen, how can you be so heartless? A few days ago, you and Miss Xiao were still lovers. How can you be so heartless now? Seeing that Yen Shi failed to persuade him, Wang Xingxue also became a little angry. His face darkened and he snorted coldly. His words were extremely unpleasant, almost pointing at Yen Shi's nose and saying that he had an affair with Miss Xiao. Yen Shi didn't expect Wang Xingxue to say that. He was so angry that his face turned pale. He slammed the table hard and suddenly stood up. Child Wang, the door is over there. You'd better go back. As for Miss Xiao, you can arrange her to be with whoever you want, but don't come to me. Wang Xingxue thought that Yen Shi was going to hit him, so he was startled. He hurriedly stood up and stepped back, but he didn't expect that he would kick the leg of the chair in a panic. His feet went soft and he fell heavily to the ground. For a moment he screamed in pain and looked very embarrassed. Yen Shi looked at Wang Xingxue coldly in front of her with an angry face. She reached out and pulled Wang Xingxue up from the ground, and then directly pushed him out of the door. Under Wang Xingxue's surprised gaze, the door was slammed shut. Wang Xingxue's feet shrank, and they were almost clamped together. Hey you! Wang Xingxue was so angry that he wanted to stomp his feet. How could he be willing to be pushed out like this? In fact, it was not a big deal to be pushed out. If he didn't do it well, Xiao Jing would definitely not let him go. He had thought that he could threaten Madame of Marquis Xing by seizing the things left by his sister. Unexpectedly, Madame of Marquis Xing also had an accident, so it was meaningless to take it out. He had to lower his head and let Xiao Jing order him around. Otherwise, he couldn't even enter the gate of Marquis Xing's mansion. His master had said that he must stay close to the gate of Marquis Xing's mansion. How could he break it off so easily? But now Xiao Jing would definitely be angry if Yen Shi didn't do it well. Wang Xingxue also regretted it at this time. If he had known that Yen Shi was suspicious, he would never have met Miss Xiao in private. Now he couldn't explain it clearly, so he blamed himself for being careless. He thought that Yen Shi was in the palm of his hand, that he could see whatever he wanted him to see and hear whatever he wanted him to hear. But now he was really unwilling to give up. He stood up, patted the dust, knocked on Yen Shi's door hard, and said, Brother Yen, open the door and listen to my explanation. It's really not what you think. You really misunderstood Miss Xiao and me. He didn't believe that he couldn't knock on Yen Shi's door today. Child Wang, our fifth miss is here today, and Prince Qin is also here. He went to the guest courtyard to rest just now. If you make a scene here and alarm Prince Qin, it will be bad. A servant appeared beside him and calmly advised him in a low voice. Wang Xingxue loosened his hand. When the carriage of Prince Chen's mansion came over, he certainly saw it clearly. Thinking of Prince Chen's reputation and Xiao Wanru, who was difficult to deal with, Wang Xingxue put down his hand. It was indeed inappropriate to alarm others at this time. The fifth Miss Xiao was very difficult to deal with before she got married, and now it was even more inappropriate to make trouble. Brother Yen, I'll go back first today. Think about it carefully. This is really just a misunderstanding. Miss Xiao is such a good girl. How could she have behaved inappropriately? If she had behaved inappropriately, she would have left with the man that day when he tried to snatch her away. How could she have ended up in this situation now? Wang Xingxue explained at the door again and then left helplessly. He had to go back and discuss with Miss Xiao how to win Yen Shi over. Chapter 898. Hearing that there was no sound at the door, Yen Shi opened the door with a frown, only to see a servant standing at the door and immediately became vigilant. Child Yen, our master wants to see you. The servant took a step forward and said respectfully, Who is your master? Yen Shi looked at the servant up and down and found that he was someone she didn't know, so she became more cautious. Our master used to be fifth Miss Xiao, now Princess Qin. She has a few words to ask you. Child Yen, please come with me. The servant was Wang Feng, Nanny Yu's son. After Xiao Wanru returned to Marquis Xing's mansion, he came with her. In the past, he helped in the outer court and occasionally inquired about the news in the outer court. Fifth Miss Xiao? Yen Shi frowned and said, It's inconvenient for a man and a woman to keep a distance from each other. Child Yen, don't worry. You just need to say a few words to her when we meet. No one will criticize you. Wang Feng explained with a smile. In other words, the two of them pretended to meet by chance? In this way, it was indeed not easy to arouse suspicion. Moreover, they were accompanied by a servant girl. Thinking that it was because of the fifth Miss Xiao that she could find the secret between Miss Zhao and Wang Xingxue, she wondered if the fifth Miss Xiao wanted to remind her of something. Somehow, she felt that it was credible. Thinking of this, she nodded and followed Wang Feng to the garden of Marquis Xing's mansion. The gardens of Marquis Xing's mansion were basically in the inner court, and outsiders were not allowed to enter. However, Yan Shi was different. He had been living in Marquis Xing's mansion. Old Madam had once said that if he was tired of studying, he could go to the garden for a walk. Now it was not awkward for him to go to the garden. The old maid of Chuehua Gate let them go with a smile. Wang Feng didn't enter the inner court. He only gave Yan Shi some instructions and then returned to the outer court. It was not an eyesore for Yan Shi to enter the garden alone, but it was a little eyesore for him, a servant of the mansion, to follow her. Yan Shi entered the garden and walked along the road casually. Soon he met Xiao Wanru, who also came out to walk in the garden. When they met face to face, Yan Shi bowed respectfully. He was indeed grateful to the fifth Miss Xiao. Child Yan, you are too polite. I wonder if there is anything around you that people can plot against? Xiao Wanru said straightforwardly with a smile. There must be a reason why Wang Xingxue made his move. I'm just an ordinary student. Why would anyone want anything from me? Yan Shi shook his head and blurted out. In fact, he had been thinking about this question for the past few days. He didn't have anything on him that Wang Xingxue could covet, so why did he target him? Since it's not Child Yan, it must be the family behind Child Yan. Wang Xingxue used to have a bad relationship with my second uncle. Originally, Marquis Xing's mansion didn't allow him to visit, but that day, he not only came to visit openly, but also none of the servants in the mansion came to stop him. Xiao Wanru reminded Yan Shi calmly with her watery eyes falling on Yan Shi's face. She could tell that Yan Shi was not the same kind of person as Wang Xingxue. Yan Shi didn't look at her randomly when she saw Xiao Wanru. She only glanced at Xiao Wanru when she bowed just now and behaved very well. Xiao Wanru could tell at a glance whether the rules were real or fake. Yan Shi's heart skipped a beat, but he was thinking about another thing. Did Marquis Xing know what Wang Xingxue had done? Since Wang Xingxue had fallen out with Marquis Xing's mansion, it was impossible for Marquis Xing's mansion to allow him to visit again. But now no one stopped him. Even though she could see that the servants in the mansion didn't like Wang Xingxue sometimes, no one drove him away in front of her. Wang Xingxue was also free to come and go in Marquis Xing's mansion. Her heart twitched fiercely and her eyes suddenly widened. Could it be that what happened between Wang Xingxue and Miss Zhao really had something to do with Marquis Xing? Thinking that Marquis Xing, who had always been kind to her, was secretly plotting against her, she felt inexplicably uncomfortable and couldn't believe it. How could there be such a person? She must have thought wrong. It was just that she had never suspected something in the past, but now she was suspicious of it. Child Yan, think about it carefully. Is someone plotting against you or something in Yan's mansion? Otherwise, Wang Xingxue, the villain, wouldn't be concerned about you. As for other things, Child Yan, you'd better find out. The Imperial examination in spring is coming soon. At this time, there is no room for any mistake. The censors of the censorate have the sharpest ears, and it is the easiest for them to find out something, especially about reputation. Seeing that Yan Shi was lost in thought, Xiao Wanru knew that it was about time. She reminded her again, bowed slightly to Yan Shi, and turned to leave. Yan Shi stood aside and looked at Xiao Wanru's back as she left. Her face darkened. Did he really forget something? What was Wang Xingxue plotting against her? Money? It was impossible. Although she had given Miss Xiao some money, it was not a lot. He didn't bring much money with him when he came to the capital city, so it was impossible for him to have a lot of spare money. But if it was not money, what was it? Was it related to her imperial examination in spring? Yan Shi wanted to stop the fifth Miss Xiao, but he couldn't open his mouth inexplicably. He could only watch Xiao Wanru's slender back disappear in front of him. This matter was very strange. He had to find out more clearly. He turned around and went to the outer courtyard decisively. Originally, he didn't want to pay attention to Wang Xingxue and Miss Zhao, nor did he want to find out anything. But now he felt that he had to find out clearly. Otherwise, the consequences would not sound good. With Xiao Wanru's reminder before, he still trusted Xiao Wanru very much. The old maid guarding the Chuehua gate saw him leave as soon as he came in. She didn't care much and just bowed slightly. This scholar was strange. When he suddenly had inspiration, he had to go back to the study. The old maid was not a scholar, so she didn't understand where the so-called inspiration came from and how it happened at different times. After arriving at the outer courtyard, Yan Shi called his servant, called an ordinary carriage from Marquis Xing's mansion, and asked the coachman to drive it to Miss Zhao's courtyard at the city gate. This time, he had to find out what was going on and what they were up to. The carriage went all the way forward and came to the back door after making a few turns. Yan Shi and the servant jumped out of the carriage and asked the carriage to go back first. They didn't need to wait for him and said that they had something to do later. The coachman didn't take it seriously. He nodded and drove the carriage away. Yan Shi looked around and quietly saw the tree beside Xiao Wanru's carriage that day. He immediately climbed the tree and climbed over the wall with the servant. He came from a family of generals. Even if he didn't learn martial arts, his physical quality was much better than that of ordinary people. The servant was even more clever. After entering, he helped Yan Shi, and the two of them landed quietly in the courtyard. The courtyard was very empty. There were no outsiders here. Only Miss Zhao and her servant girl lived here. Yan Shi found Miss Zhao pitiful, so he temporarily rented it for her. The door of the main room was slightly closed, and they heard voices coming from inside. It was not only a woman's voice, but also a man's voice. When they got closer, they could hear it clearly. It was Wang Xingxue's voice. As expected, Wang Xingxue came to find Miss Zhao after leaving Marquis Xing's mansion. The master and the servant walked quietly to the window on one side and stood by the window to listen to the voices inside quietly. It was already spring and the flowers were in full bloom. The window was wide open, and the two partitions were opened, which happened to block the people hiding on one side. Yan Shi and the servant listened to the movements inside from one side. The sobbing voice of a woman sounded quite touching and pitiful. It was Miss Zhao's voice, but Miss Zhao's voice sounded more dignified in the past, but now it was as delicate and soft as water. Okay, don't cry. Good girl, don't be sad. It's okay. Wang Xingxue comforted Miss Zhao's voice. They couldn't see what was going on inside from the window, but they could tell from the voice that the two of them were extremely unruly. Wang Xingxue himself once said that he already had 2 concubines by his side, and now his relationship with Miss Zhao was also very unclear. What should we do now? He didn't take the bait, and now he doesn't come. How can we continue to do this? Miss Zhao sobbed, feeling very aggrieved. Her eyes were slightly red, which made Wang Xingxue's heart itch. He couldn't help kissing her on her white and tender face. When he saw her red lips, he couldn't help kissing her hard again. The two of them made whimpering sounds. Even though Yan Shi didn't see it, he could imagine the scene in his mind. He was so angry that his face turned pale. Of course, it wasn't because he cared about Miss Zhao inside. It was because he heard what the two of them said. He knew that the two of them were really working together to plot against him. He was furious. If he didn't want to hear it more clearly, he couldn't control himself and rushed in to beat the adulterous couple. Finally, the two people inside separated a little. Miss Zhao leaned in Wang Xingxue's arms in a delicate way. She seemed to have no bones, her clothes were messy, and she was panting. This is not good. My sister will be angry. Miss Zhao said softly with a hint of anger in her watery eyes, which made Wang Xingxue confused. He reached into her clothes again and said, "What's wrong with that? When everything is settled, you should marry me too. It's a good thing that you two sisters can get along well with each other." Wang Xingxue was speechless. "But my sister won't agree. She will hit me," Miss Zhao said softly with tears in her eyes. It's useless if she won't agree. She is just a concubine. If she doesn't agree, let her go home. You are the one I like now, and you are the one I care most about. Wang Xingxue coaxed, which made Miss Zhao burst with joy. She didn't move even though his hands were messing around in her clothes. She just leaned on him shyly with a pair of charming eyes. But what should we do now? This Yen, she is not so easy to be fooled, Miss Zhao said in distress. Speaking of this matter, Wang Xingxue also lost interest. He stretched his hand out of his lapel and said angrily, "This Yen, she is really shameless. I gave him such a great beauty, but he can't even see her. Does he want to see the princess?" What? Chapter 899. Qian. The latest chapter on medical skills of the Crown Princess was updated as soon as possible. What should we do now? Miss Zhao said in a sweet voice. She pulled Wang Xingxue's hand hard and suddenly looked out of the door. Will he suddenly rush in like that day? No, I'm annoyed now. If I had known it, I wouldn't have come that day. How could he happen to meet me? If I can't do it, my uncle will be angry. Wang Xingxue was also quite distressed. Of course, he would not say that his relationship with Xiao Jing, Marquis Xing, was actually very bad, and they were just using each other. The Marquis wants him to sign a marriage certificate, but it seems that he won't sign it. What should we do? Miss Zhao became more anxious when she heard this. She reached out to put her arms around Wang Xingxue's neck and said with affection in her eyes, "If you can't do it well, you will be punished by your uncle and I will be sad." Seeing the beauty thinking of him like this, Wang Xingxue smiled again. He thought for a while and said, "Since this way doesn't work, we can trick him to sign it. As long as he signs it, he can't escape the marriage. Anyway, so many people know that he often comes here, and this house is rented by him. There are many witnesses." Wang Xingxue said proudly. What he needed now was a signature. Originally, he wanted to let Yan Shi take a fancy to Miss Zhao's signature, or to help Miss Zhao get through difficulties, he wanted to sign it temporarily, lest Miss Zhao be taken away by the evil playboy. Now this way didn't work, so he could only trick Yan Shi into signing it. He mixed such a document with other documents, tricked Yan Shi into signing it, and then made it look old. Thinking of this, he was not in a hurry. He knew a lot of scoundrels, and he just needed to find someone else to trick Yan Shi into signing it. Of course, this was actually the last step. There was no other way. After all, the fewer people knew about this kind of thing, the better. Since you want to trick him into signing it, can you not write my name? Miss Zhao rolled her eyes and said, "You don't want to be with him?" Wang Xingxue smiled and gently pinched Miss Zhao's face, causing her to cry out in pain. "Of course I don't want to be associated with him. At that time, I'll be humiliated. Just use the name of a maid. Anyway, she's just a maid. You can even..." Miss Zhao paused and tilted her head suggestively. If this girl dies, he won't be able to explain himself. There were only the two of them in the room. The servant girl and the manservant were guarding the front door. That day, Yan Shi rushed in from the front door and caught them off guard. Take her life. Wang Xingxue's eyes lit up, and his heart skipped a beat. If that was the case, it was even more difficult to explain. That's right. Her name is on the marriage certificate. She said something else, and then there's the testimony of the neighbors. In addition, she couldn't bear it and jumped to her death in the end. She could say whatever she wanted. Miss Zhao said. Yan Shi, who was outside the window, was so angry that her eyes almost popped out. She wanted to rush in and beat the vicious couple. If it weren't for Fifth Miss Zhao's reminder, she was afraid that she would really fall into their trap. At that time, she would be unable to explain herself. If he really succeeded this time, they would ruin his future. Even if his father was there to help him, he wouldn't be able to get away with it. Who was plotting against her? She had just arrived in the capital city and only knew a few people in Marquis Xing's mansion. Who would dislike her so much and make such a vicious plan? When she met Wang Xingxue for the first time, she had already seen the injustice and saved Miss Zhao. This was premeditated, and it was not only against her, but also against her father. According to Wang Xingxue's words, was it really Marquis Xing? But in any case, She couldn't understand why Marquis Xing, Xiao Jing, would deal with her. Or did Wang Xingxue not tell the truth to this woman and mean to evade her? For a moment, it was difficult to figure out whether it was true or not, so Yanxi was more and more eager to continue listening. Baby, you're right. This will be better. Yanxi still wants to marry a daughter from a noble family and stay in the capital city. It's really a dream. Wang Xingxue was overjoyed. He nodded repeatedly and kissed Miss Xiao's face several times before letting go. Then write the name of the servant girl. Miss Xiao was also overjoyed. She didn't want to be together with Yanxi, who was so unlucky. With the marriage certificate, it was really great that only a servant girl was able to get it done. Okay, it's settled. I'll think about it in detail after returning to the mansion. I can't let you feel wronged, Wang Xingxue said with great satisfaction. If this plan succeeded, Xiao Jing would give him a lot of benefits. In addition, such a beauty would be sent to him, which was also interesting. As soon as he finished his business, evil thoughts arose in his mind again, and his hands refused to stop. Child Wang, don't do this. The woman in the window gasped. What are you afraid of? There's no one here. Wang Xingxue said, Baby, come on, let me treat you well. The voice in the window became chaotic. Yanxi turned around and walked out with a livid face. The servant hurriedly followed her, and the two of them climbed over the courtyard wall along the way they came. Child, the servant cautiously reminded, we'd better go out a little more, otherwise it will be bad if someone hears us. Come on, let's go outside. Yanxi nodded and walked out. There was a huge wave in his heart. All the bits and pieces after he entered the capital city were presented in front of him. Everything showed that Xiao Jing had taken care of him, and there was nothing wrong with him. Besides, he had done an excellent job and didn't have any conflict with Xiao Jing. He couldn't tell whether what Wang Xingxue said was true or not for the moment, but it was inevitable that he would be on guard against Marquis Xing. According to Guan Wangxing's theory, was there something between his father and Marquis Xing, so he got in the way? Thinking of this, Yan Xing immediately stopped in his tracks, wondering if he had overlooked something. Before he entered the capital city, his father had once called him to the study and told him with certainty that Duke Xing would definitely take care of him. Why was his father so sure? The two families hadn't seen each other for many years. Although they were aristocratic families, his father used to say that he had a good relationship with the former heir of Duke Xing, not the current Marquis Xing. Why was his father so sure that Marquis Xing would take care of him? He only needed to study hard in the Marquis's mansion and he didn't need to worry about anything else? There was something wrong. It seemed that he had to write to his father and ask him whether the relationship between him and Marquis Xing was good or bad, or whether there was any agreement between them in private. Xiao Wanru didn't know what Yanxi had heard, but after knowing that Yanxi had gone to see it, she wandered on the street for a long time with a livid face. It was Wang Feng who came to Prince Chen's mansion to report it the next day. Wang Feng could have gone back with Xiao Wanru on the day he returned to his family. He was originally Xiao Wanru's servant and had nothing to do with Marquis Xing's mansion. However, on that day, he stared behind Yanxi and watched the whole process. He saw Yanxi climb over the wall in anger and come out with a livid face. Then he wandered on the street for a long time in a daze before returning to Marquis Xing's mansion. It was very late when he arrived at Marquis Xing's mansion. Xiao Wanru and Chu Luqian had already returned to their mansion. Wang Feng packed up a little and left Marquis Xing's mansion for Prince Chen's mansion the next day. After hearing Wang Feng's words, Xiao Wanru nodded and asked Nanny Yu to arrange Wang Feng's residence. As for his work, it would be arranged by Xiao Xuanzi. After Wang Feng left, Yu Jie asked, Miss, does Child Yen know something? Xiao Wanru nodded and said, he should have heard something or suspected something. That's good. That was indeed good. It was 80% to 90% likely to have something to do with Xiao Jing, but she didn't know what Yanxi and Yanxi's family had done to offend Xiao Jing. Since this matter had now attracted Yanxi's attention, Xiao Wanru didn't care about it anymore. Originally, this matter had nothing to do with her. She just gave Yanxi a few words of advice for the sake of the two of them facing difficulties together in the last life. What would happen next would depend on Yanxi. Of course, this had nothing to do with her. Xiao Wanru didn't take it seriously, but she didn't expect that this matter would eventually fall on her, and it was closely related to her and even became a very important part of it. Of course, these were all in the future. What Xiao Wanru was busy with now was not this other people's business. Looking at the pile of rewards in front of her, she separated herself from them. These were the rewards sent by the Empress today. However, she had already received the previous rewards, so she couldn't understand the meaning of the rewards this time. While she was thinking, she suddenly heard the servant girl's voice coming from outside. "Greetings, Your Highness." It was Chu Luchan. She immediately stood up and went out to greet him. Before she reached the door, Chu Luchan had already come in. As soon as he entered the door, he took her hand and walked in. Although it had only been a few days, the servant girls had already left with good eyesight. Of course, they were also full of joy. Prince Chen was very good to their master, and the servants were also happy to see it. "What's wrong? Is there anything bothering you?" Chu Luchan raised his handsome eyes. He had already seen the rewards on the table, so he asked knowingly. "There's nothing bothering me. It's just that there are too many rewards and I don't know why." Xiao Wanru said helplessly. She reached out to point at the things on the table and said, "When I entered the Imperial Palace, the Empress had already given me some rewards. Why did she suddenly give me some more now?" "It's for the mission. Imperial Grandmother should also give me rewards later." Chu Luchan said casually, "Just take it. Don't worry about it." "Has the mission really been settled?" Xiao Wanru's face became serious, and there was a trace of surprise in her watery eyes. She thought that this matter had been put on hold temporarily, and there was still some time before the official document was issued. She didn't expect it to be so soon, which really surprised her. There is already an official document. The time is during the Imperial examination in spring this time. When I leave, I'll be cold to my lovely wife. I'm really reluctant to leave her," Chu Luchan said as he took her hand and kissed it lovingly on the corner of her mouth. Then he said seriously, "But it doesn't matter. I'll come back to accompany you as soon as possible. At that time, you won't have to stay alone." Chapter 900. Xiao Wanru felt that she really wanted to hit the handsome Prince Chen in front of her. How could he be so cheeky? It seemed that she couldn't fall asleep without him. In fact, his body was so hot every time, which really made her unable to fall asleep. "Take your time. I'm not in a hurry." Xiao Wanru gritted her teeth. "I'm in a hurry. Alas, I'm really in a hurry." Chu Luchan looked at her and said. There was something else in his words. Xiao Wanru didn't understand at first, but when she did, she blushed again. They were talking about a serious problem, but she didn't know why he always talked about something not serious. She couldn't win against him in this kind of thing at all. She clenched her fists hard, which made Chu Luchan feel her annoyance. Okay, use whatever you can use and throw it into the private warehouse if you can't use it. It's just some good-looking, fun and delicious things." Chu Luchan said indifferently. He reached out to pick a piece of black brocade and looked sideways at Xiao Wanru. "Remember to make a suit of clothes for me. I haven't had a wife for so many years, so I can wear these clothes casually." Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on the brocade robe he was wearing, and the corner of her mouth twitched. She didn't understand why he said that he could wear casually. If these clothes could be worn casually, what were the clothes worn by others? "I'll sew new clothes for you, but I hope you won't dislike them." Xiao Wanru glanced at him and said, "Why would I dislike them? Other people don't have the clothes made by my wife, so I should show off. In the future, all my clothes will be made by Zhuozhua." Chu Luchan said proudly. Looking at him like this, Xiao Wanru couldn't help laughing. "Come on, I'll show you something." Chu Luchan smiled and took Xiao Wanru to the table in front of the window. He took out a box from his sleeve and put it on the table. What is this?" Xiao Wanru said in surprise. This box looked like a jewelry box, but it was not exactly a jewelry box, so it was hard to know what was inside. "Open it," Chu Luchan said with a smile. Xiao Wanru answered and opened the box. When she saw a pair of hinge bracelets inside, she was stunned for a moment. The bracelets were made of gold hinge bracelets, and each of them was inlaid with 5 blue gems. It was already very difficult to find such a blue and flawless gem, let alone 10 of them that were exactly the same. This isn't an ordinary bracelet, right? Xiao Wanru picked up one in surprise and looked at it, and then her eyes fell on the box. It was a bit far-fetched to say that this box was a jewelry box. It was really not made of ordinary jewelry boxes. There were no exquisite ornaments on it, and it was very simple and plain. It was hard to believe that there was such an exquisite pair of bracelets inside. Chu Lu was very satisfied with Xiao Wanru's intelligence. He reached out to pick up the other one, pointed it at the window, and pressed one of the sapphires. Immediately, a few sharp needles were shot heavily at the window. "There's a sharp weapon inside," Xiao Wanru said in surprise. She loosened her grip and the bracelets fell down. Chu Luchen reached out to take them and said, "Don't worry. The mechanism can only be broken open with great force. Moreover, there is only one of these 5 gems. It's okay to wear it on your hand at ordinary times." As he said, he handed over the bracelets in his hand. Xiao Wanru took them carefully. Under Chu Liuchen's guidance, she saw clearly that they were really different. There were rice grain-sized pearls in the places where several sapphires were inlaid, but there was no pearl in the one with the mechanism. "I'm going to leave the capital city for the time being. Although you have Qing by your side, your identity is different now. I'm afraid that someone will deal with you. Wear something on your hand to protect yourself," Chu Luchen said softly. As he spoke, he took the other bracelet in his hand, put it on for Xiao Wanru, and took off her previous bracelet. Xiao Wanru bit her lip and let him buckle the bracelet carefully for her. She unconsciously raised the corners of her mouth slightly. After the bracelet in her hand was put on, Chu Luchen pulled down her sleeve for her, and it was seamless at once. "I'm not in the capital city. Be careful," Chu Luchen warned her again. In fact, he had said this several times, but he kept saying it. Even he couldn't help laughing after saying it. He had always been a loner. Even if the Empress Dowager had warned him, he would ignore it. But now he repeatedly warned another person. "I'll be careful. You should also be careful. The situation in the southern border has always been strange. If you act rashly, there will inevitably be future troubles and even your life will be in danger. Although you won't go to the southern border, you must be careful when you reach the border." Xiao Wanru was actually worried. She really couldn't remember clearly what had happened in the last life, and she couldn't give Chu Luchen any better hints. The only thing she could do was to repeatedly warn Chu Luchen that the Jin country was in danger and tell him not to take risks easily. Chu Liuchen's eyes softened. He reached out to hold Xiao Wanru in his arms, gently touched her head, and comforted her softly. "Don't worry. I'll be fine." His eyes became cold in a place that Xiao Wanru couldn't see. Even if something happened, it was not his business. He wanted to see who was the troublemaker this time. "You can solve the problem of Marquis Xing's mansion by yourself. If you can't, I'm here," Chu Luchen said in a low voice, but it was enough to reach Xiao Wanru's heart. She felt inexplicably sour in her heart. Marquis Xing's mansion was her greatest enemy in this life. Although Chu Luchen didn't say it, she could see it. The reason why he didn't do anything and let her let go of him was that he wanted to make her happy. How could she not understand it? "I'll solve it. If I can't, I'm here for you," Xiao Wanru said with a slightly red face. She said it confidently, but when she thought about it carefully, she couldn't help blushing. In the past, she would not say such confident words. "Yes, I'm here," Chu Luchen said with a smile. He reached out to hold her slender waist tightly and let her lean in his arms. His heart was full of joy. Neither of them said anything, but it was not awkward or weird. When they stayed together, it seemed that even if they didn't say or do anything, it was already delightful. "Master, Commandery Prince Qing wants to see you," Xiao Xuanzi boldly said at the door. "No," Chu Luchen said impatiently. "Yes, I'll tell Commandery Prince Qing right away." Xiao Xuanzi ran away quickly. Xiao Wanru saw Xiao Xuanzi running as if someone was chasing him through the window and couldn't help laughing. "Is Commandery Prince Qing engaged? Who knows?" Chu Luchen said casually and pressed Xiao Wanru's raised head back to his chest. "Why do you care about him? Anyway, It's up to him whether he's engaged or not, and no one else agrees to it. Xiao Wanru leaned on his chest and thought of something. Your Highness, do you mean that he might not be engaged? Maybe. Anyway, he just said so. When the accident happened in the Imperial Palace, I heard that he was going to marry the daughter of a concubine in your mansion, so I said that he was engaged. But this time, he hit his own foot. Chu Luchen said with a sneer. Chu Qing thought that he had concealed his thoughts well, but he didn't expect that many people were watching him. The so-called engaged girl was just the niece of a small official. If Chu Qing was a man of his word, he would not rush to the front of the stage in such a big way and fight in person. Is the Yuhui Nunnery Commandery Prince Qing's base camp? Xiao Wanru suddenly thought of what had happened in the Yuhui Nunnery and couldn't help asking. No matter whose base camp it is, don't go to the Yuhui Nunnery if you have nothing to do. Chu Luchen said. Why not? I still want to see Mingqiu Nun. Xiao Wanru moved her head and said unhappily. You can go there after I come back. If you really want to see Mingqiu Nun, you can ask her to come here to treat you. Chu Luchen said meaningfully. Xiao Wanru understood and raised the corners of her mouth. It was not that Chu Luchen didn't want her to go there, but he was afraid that something would happen to her in the Yuhui Nunnery. The Yuhui Nunnery was really not an ordinary place. After so many accidents, nothing happened now, which was really surprising. Chu Qing's accident could be big or small, but in the end, nothing happened at all. The Yuhui Nunnery was still the Yuhui Nunnery, as if nothing had happened. The Jiang family is still there, Xiao Wanru said. After saying this, she immediately blushed. Such a voice and such a tone sounded more like she was acting coquettishly. The Jiang family's matter is not urgent. Let's put it aside first. When I come back, I will go with you. Chu Luchen glanced at her and told her in a low voice. This feeling was very good, as if the two of them should get along in this way. It was a kind of joy of peaceful time. Xiao Wanru relaxed her body and let Chu Luchen hold her tightly in his arms. She slowly closed her watery eyes. This was Chu Luchen, not any person she had met in the last life who she could not rely on. Your Highness, you can go about your own business. If I mess up my business, I will come to you. But before that, you have to promise me that you won't interfere in it at will. Since she had spoken, Xiao Wanru did not hesitate and directly said what was in her mind. Although Chu Luchen was favored by the Empress Dowager and the Emperor, his identity was destined to make him restless. His every move would fall into the eyes of those who had ulterior motives, and people would also find out about his other affairs. Xiao Wanru was more willing to deal with her own affairs with the power in her hands, and did not want Chu Luchen to be suspected. Chu Luchen was not surprised by Xiao Wanru's words. As early as the first time he saw Xiao Wanru, Chu Luchen knew that this little girl was not as kind as she seemed to be. She secretly plotted and acted decisively. Chu Luchen was shocked by everything she did, but he also felt pity for her. If she had not been driven into a corner and had nowhere to rely on, a girl would not be so sensible and scheming. Okay, I will do what you say, but remember, you must be safe. If it is not safe, I will directly take action. Chu Luchen gently pushed Xiao Wanru's face away, and the bottom of his handsome eyes was covered with frost, which was so deep and cold that it made people's heart palpitate. But in Xiao Wanru's eyes, there was a strong sweetness in them. She nodded hard and said, "Don't worry, I will not let anything happen to me." Seeing her serious promise, the coldness on Chu Liuchen's face disappeared. He smiled slightly and became another gentle and handsome young man. He reached out to pinch the tip of Xiao Wanru's pretty nose and said, "Life in Prince Chen's mansion is not so difficult. You can do whatever you want. Remember that you are Prince Chen's princess." Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, held his slender fingers, and then pulled them down to play with his fingers. For a moment, the room became quiet again, and only the affection between the two of them was flowing. It was very peaceful and warm. "Master, come and have a look. Commandery Prince Qing has fainted." Xiao Xuanzi ran in panting and shouted to the main room as soon as he entered the yard. Chapter 901. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign / say, net wonderful pop-up window free reading. Chu Luchen entered the door with Xiao Xuanzi. This was an ordinary guest room, but even the guest room was very exquisite. The decoration inside was elegant and gorgeous, very similar to the style of the entire Prince Chen's mansion. There was a faint fragrance in the air. It was not strong, but it was elegant. Wake him up. Chu Luchen sat on the chair in front of the bed, leaned against the wide armrest, and said softly. Chu Qing, who was on the bed, clenched his fists under his sleeves. An imperial physician came over and took out a long needle from the medicine box. He waved the shining cold light at the sunlight coming through the window. A blazing light shone on Chu Qing's face. Before Chu Qing could react, he felt a pain on his face. The sharp pain made him shiver all over and his eyes suddenly opened. The imperial physician calmly took out the long needle from Prince Yu's body and then respectfully stepped aside. Your Highness, Commander Prince Qing has woken up. Chu Luchen waved his hand, and the imperial physician left, leaving only Chu Qing, who was lying on the bed and could not react for a while, in the room. Tell me, what's the matter? Chu Luchen said casually. Chu Qing knew that he had been discovered, so he could only turn over and sit up. Big brother, I am now the third prince of Imperial uncle. You should be careful with your words. Even if I don't care about this, if Imperial uncle or the other officials knew about it, they would definitely punish you for speaking nonsense. Chu Luchen looked up at Chu Qing. Although he was smiling, his voice was as cold as a sharp blade, as if he was cutting something. That pair of handsome eyes was deep, without the slightest hint of a smile. Your Highness, although you are the third prince of my uncle, blood is thicker than water. What's more, we are the only brothers now. Chu Qing said in a low voice. Just say what you want to say, Commander Prince Qing. Don't mention those inexplicable blood relationships, which are of little use. In my opinion, I'm closer to my other brothers than to you. Chu Luchen said lazily, and his eyes were so cold as if something had slid across Chu Qing's neck, which made his heart tighten involuntarily. He had known that Chu Luchen was extremely difficult to deal with, and he also knew that Chu Luchen might not like the blood kinship he mentioned, but he still used this excuse to say it. No matter what, I've always treated you as my big brother. Chu Qing said bitterly with a desolate expression. From the perspective of the late emperor's children, the two of them were indeed the closest in terms of bloodline. Moreover, the late emperor had already passed away, so the two of them were in a very awkward situation. Just from this point alone, the relationship between the two of them shouldn't be so cold. Chu Qing felt that no matter how cold Chu Luchen appeared to be, he must be closer to him in his heart. After all, they had the same father but different mothers. In such a situation today, how could he not be close to him? If that's what you want to say today, I'll send you to see my uncle now and let you repeat what you just said to him. Chu Luchen suddenly smiled with his eyes shining. My uncle should like to hear this kind of heartfelt words more. Chu Qing suddenly raised his head and stared at Chu Luchen. His breathing involuntarily became rapid. How dare he say this in front of the emperor? At that time, the emperor might immediately send him to prison and imprison him forever. Your Highness Prince Qin, we're close relatives. Chu Qing couldn't help saying. Chu Luchen seemed to be interested in his excitement. He leaned against the round chair on one side and his expression became a little gentler. However, in Chu Qing's eyes, such gentleness was no longer what it used to be. It made people feel that it was a sharp sword that was bloodthirsty and could cut bones. I don't have such a close relative like you. If you're here to admit this today, go and tell my uncle. Xiao Xuanzi, please ask Commander Prince Qing. Chu Luchen, don't go too far. Enraged by Chu Liuchen's ruthlessness, Chu Qing stood up angrily. What's wrong? Don't call me big brother anymore? Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile. Chu Qing looked at Chu Liuchen's beautiful and charming face and couldn't even say a word for a while. How could there be such a person? No matter from any aspect, he couldn't break through his heart. It seemed that he didn't care about anyone. How could he win over such a person? But on the other hand, if he could win over such a person, it would be of great benefit to his great cause. Anyway, he was a sick person and didn't have any requirements. Besides, he couldn't sit on the throne by himself. Thinking of this, he calmed down again and even showed a smile on his face. However, the next moment, the smile was replaced by stiffness. I don't care whether you're here to win me over or do something else today. In fact, it doesn't matter. You have to come back alive from the southern border first. Chu Liuchen's light-colored lips curled up. His smile was lively, but it also made Chu Qing tremble with fear. Suppressing the panic in his heart, Chu Qing said with a smile, "Your Highness, what do you mean by that? Is there any danger in this trip to the southern border?" Chu Liuchen raised his eyebrows and said, "If there's no danger, why do you insist on seeing me today? Of course, if Commander Prince Qing is unwilling to tell me, I'll leave." Chu Liuchen stood up and turned to leave. Chu Qing was very anxious. Of course, the purpose of his visit to Prince Chen's mansion today was to see Chu Liuchen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have pretended to faint. He had been in Prince Chen's mansion for a long time, but he basically couldn't see Chu Liuchen. Today, he finally saw him, so how could he let go of the opportunity? "Wait a minute, Your Highness. I have something to ask you." Chu Qing stopped hiding and said hurriedly, "You come to ask me for advice. Do I allow you to ask me?" Chu Liuchen stopped and glanced at him lightly with a cold smile. "Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are?" Chu Qing felt that the blood on his head was rushing up, and his whole face turned red. Who was he? He was also the son of the former emperor. Although he was not a legitimate son, he was still the blood of the former emperor. Why did Chu Liuchen look down on him? Why did he speak to him in such a dismissive tone? It was as if he was a beggar on the roadside, begging from others. He almost blurted out some words. Fortunately, he still had a trace of reason. He hurriedly closed his mouth, calmed his breath, and then said with a pale face, "No matter what you think, or whether you are willing to admit it or not, some facts always exist, whether you think it or not." "You're very thoughtful." Chu Liuchen suddenly laughed, but his eyes became colder and colder with a hint of bloodthirst. "Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you in a rage? In fact, even if I accidentally kill you, my uncle will not punish me. After all, one son of the former emperor is enough." These words sharply cut through the calmness that Chu Qing forced himself to maintain, making the panic on his face obvious. He couldn't help taking a step back and bumped into a pillar beside the bed, making a crisp sound. What Chu Liuchen said was true. If Chu Liuchen really killed him, the emperor would not only not be angry, but also be happy. Compared with Chu Liuchen, he, the healthy son of the former emperor, was the object of the emperor's taboo. If Chu Liuchen killed him, the emperor would definitely be happy. Thinking of this, how could Chu Qing not panic? Chu Liuchen looked at him coldly and said, "If you come here for something today, just say it. Don't make trouble for nothing and say something useless." "Your Highness, I want to ask for your help." Chu Qing gritted his teeth. He knew that the tricks he had said before were not only useless, but also irritated Chu Liuchen, so he did not dare to beat around the bush and said directly, "He did come here with a purpose today." After planning everything in his heart, he felt that he could not go to Nanjiang for the time being. Everyone knew that it was very dangerous to go to Nanjiang, and he might even lose his life there. He still had a bright future, so he was not willing to go to Nanjiang. Moreover, it was not the right time yet. He had miscalculated before. "You don't want to go?" Chu Liuchen raised his eyebrows. "Yes, Nanjiang is too dangerous. I'm not married yet, so I really don't want to go." Chu Qing gritted his teeth and said his intention. "Since you don't want to go, why did you ask for help at that time? It's useless to say these things now. My uncle has already made a decision, and I can't save you. Besides, why should I save you?" Chu Liuchen said casually, and his extremely long eyelashes cast a strange shadow on his white skin. Chu Qing swallowed his saliva. His previous words were originally prepared for this moment, and he was playing the family card. But now, this family card was completely useless. "If I can get rid of this mission, if anything happens to you in the future, I will definitely repay you." Chu Qing raised his head and tried to make himself look at this handsome face at the same level. His face was very handsome, and his facial features were so exquisite that they seemed to be carved out. Chu Qing used to think that he was outstanding among men in terms of appearance, but compared with Chu Luchen, he was nothing. Such a man was unparalleled in appearance. But so what? What could a sick man be proud of? Do you want to repay me? Chu Luchen said casually. Yes, I will definitely help you if you have any request. Chu Qing looked at Chu Luchen with a serious face and tried to show his sincerity. It's good to get your help, but unfortunately, I still don't have the ability to make you not go to Nanjiang. Chu Luchen smiled with a bit of his usual elegance, but the meaning in his words was not useful at all, and it seemed to be a joke. Chu Qing's face turned blue, and he narrowed his eyes hard to suppress the surging anger in his heart. They were both talking about the son of the former emperor, but why was Chu Luchen more favored than him? He, Commander Prince Qing, was useless in the court, but Chu Luchen, Prince Qin, could be favored by the emperor alone. Shouldn't this kind of mission be Chu Liuchen's matter? Why did it fall on him in the end? At that time, he just took advantage of the situation to refuse it. Why was the emperor so partial? Wasn't it much better for the former emperor's legitimate son to die than for him, a son of a concubine? However, although you are going to Nanjiang, I can help you in other aspects. Chu Liuchen's next words immediately gave Chu Qing new hope. His eyes immediately lit up, and he asked anxiously, what aspects? Chapter 902. Didn't you just say that you are not married? When you were in the palace, didn't you promise to marry the second miss of Marquis Xing's mansion? I heard that you have been engaged. At this time, you don't have to be so particular about marrying a concubine. Take advantage of these days to marry a concubine. Maybe you can have a descendant. Chu Luchen said meaningfully. Chu Qing's face turned red, blue, and then green. His eyes fell on Chu Liuchen's face almost coldly, and then he slowly lowered his eyes, with strong killing intent flashing at the bottom of his eyes. Chu Luchen dared to humiliate him like this. It was a great shame for him that a dying patient dared to treat him like this. He clenched his hands tightly and tried to suppress the restlessness in his heart. After a long while, he slowly raised his head, calmed his eyes, and cupped his hands to Chu Luchen. I'd like to hear the details. Chu Luchen seemed to be very satisfied with his performance, and his attitude actually became amiable. He sat down again and politely waved to him, motioning him to sit in a chair beside him. Xiao Xuanzi was very discerning and asked someone to serve 2 cups of tea. Then he lowered his head and stood beside Chu Luchen to serve him. I heard that when second Miss Xiao fell into the water in the palace that day, it was Commander Prince Qing who saved her. Both the Empress and the Emperor know about it. But now that it has been so long, Commander Prince Qing doesn't go to Marquis Xing's mansion to ask about it. Do you want to go back on your word? Chu Liuchen's attitude was very gentle, and his smile was elegant and harmless. Of course, this was only what it seemed to be. Chu Qing had to think for a while and then said, Prince Qin, do you mean that I should hurry up to Marquis Xing's mansion to propose marriage? It's not my idea, but the idea of Marquis Xing's mansion. I'm just passing on an oral instruction. It's the idea of Marquis Xing's mansion. If Commander Prince Qing doesn't want to admit it, they can also marry second Miss Xiao to someone else. Commander Prince Qing is not the only royal relative. Commander Prince Qing's heart skipped a beat, and a trace of embarrassment flashed across his face. Others didn't know what had happened in the Imperial Palace that day, but he knew it clearly. He had saved Xiao Yanru, the first miss of Marquis Xing's mansion, but Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou testified for Xiao Yanru, saying that he had saved second miss, the daughter of non-lineal descent of Marquis Xing, and asked him to marry her early as a legal wife. How could Chu Qing take this lying down? After that, he claimed that he was already engaged and that he couldn't give her the position of the main wife. At most, he could give her a concubine. But even if she was a concubine, as long as she thought of being bullied by Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou at that time and forced to swallow it, she felt as uncomfortable as swallowing a fly. This was also the reason why Chu Qing had never wanted to go to Marquis Xing's mansion. Anyway, his legal wife had not married yet, and he was not in a hurry to marry a concubine. He did not expect that this matter would bring him other troubles. Just because he said that he was already engaged and that the position of his wife was already taken, the consort selection this time actually didn't appoint a wife for him. Originally, he had thought of marrying a noble lady from a noble family so that he could use the Yu clan's influence to slowly settle in. He did not expect that after his previous words were spread, he would not be able to get a share of these noble ladies. The reason for all this was that he had gone into the water to save Xiao Yenru at that time. He went for wool and lost the rice. Besides, he was very fond of her, so he really didn't want to think about it again. Now it seemed that Marquis Xing's mansion couldn't bear it anymore. She was just a useless daughter of non-lineal descent, and it was said that she was not favored. What was the use of her? Chu Qing snorted coldly and said, "How can a withered flower marry another clan member?" Since Xiao Jieshi admitted that she was the one who fell into the water, but he was not the only one who saw her wet clothes. A withered flower is not useless. At least she is the daughter of Marquis Xing, who is much better than the lineal miss of the third branch. Now that Xiao Baolin has entered the Imperial Palace, she is the only daughter of Marquis Xing, so her status will naturally be high. Chu Luchen said lazily, as if he had not heard the contempt in Chu Qing's words. His words made Chu Qing's heart skip a beat, and he couldn't help taking this matter seriously for the first time. If the first miss of Marquis Xing's mansion married any other prince, Marquis Xing would definitely stand on his eldest daughter's side. But now his eldest daughter was useless, and the only one he could use was his second daughter. Even if her reputation was ruined and her status was not high, she should still be of great use. The emperor did not choose any noble lady for him. Although Xiao Jie was not of a high status, at least she had a biological father. Thinking of this, Chu Qing suddenly felt that he did not suffer a loss. Is there really a relative who wants to marry her? Chu Qing frowned slightly. In fact, I just want to watch the fun. I didn't want to help you at first, but since you came to me today and asked me to find a way to keep a successor for you, I will reluctantly tell you that Marquis Xing's mansion doesn't intend to marry the second miss, who has a high status, to you. I guess they want to substitute her for the successor. Chu Liuchen's tone was a little frivolous. Chu Qing was extremely ashamed and resentful. Originally, he looked down on Xiao Jie, but now it seemed that Xiao Jie looked down on him. A little daughter of a non-lineal descent dared to look down on him. How could he not be angry? He clenched his fists hard, suppressed the restlessness in his heart, and said, "They want the daughter of the third branch to marry me? The daughter of the third branch is also good. At least she is a lineal miss." Chu Luchen narrowed his eyes lazily and did not give him a positive answer. He just waved his hand and said, "That's all I have to say. You better go back first. I originally wanted to watch the fun of substituting her, but now it seems that I can't see it. I'm tired. You can go back first." Prince Chen, the trip to the southern border this time. Chu Qing swallowed his anger and asked. "The trip to the southern border is imperative. But for your safety, you can go to see General Qin. With General Qin's ability, there should be no problem for him to protect you." Chu Luchen became impatient. He closed his eyes and rested there. His attitude was extremely frivolous. Even though he was furious, Chu Qing did not dare to really get angry. He glanced coldly at Chu Liuchen's handsome face, which was as beautiful as jade. He stood up, cupped his hands to Chu Luchen, and said, "Thank you for your advice, Your Highness. It doesn't matter whether I give you advice or not. If you have nothing to do, you can do something. I can also watch the fun." Chu Luchen did not open his eyes and said casually, "Anyway, thank you, Your Highness." Chu Qing cupped his hands to Chu Luchen again politely, and then walked out of the door. The little eunuch he brought with him was waiting outside the door, and another steward of Prince Chen's mansion led him out. In fact, his trip to Prince Chen's mansion today was not fruitless. At least, it made Chu Qing clear his mind. He did not intend to let go of Xiao Jie. Xiao Jie, who was originally of little use, became a popular person because of Xiao Yenru's entry into the Imperial Palace. In this case, he naturally wanted her. Standing at the door of Prince Chen's mansion, Chu Qing took a deep breath. On the way out, Chu Qing had sorted out his thoughts and looked very calm. He looked very calm, and Chu Liuchen's reaction was actually expected. If Chu Luchen really helped him enthusiastically, it would be suspicious. but now his attitude was just right. Originally, this sickly man was indifferent and always unfathomable. As for the so-called harmlessness, of course, he would not believe it. Even if the Imperial family was a dying invalid, in fact, he would not be harmless. Fortunately, Chu Liuchen's words aroused his interest. Moreover, Chu Liuchen had never been on good terms with Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou. Your Highness, please get in the carriage. The carriage of Commandery Prince Qing's mansion stopped in front of the mansion. Chu Qing nodded, got in the carriage, and then ordered, "Go to Marquis Xing's mansion." Since Xiao Jie was of use, she naturally had to marry into Marquis Xing's mansion as soon as possible, and it was even better for her to get pregnant as soon as possible. Only in this way could Marquis Xing stand by his side and help him wholeheartedly. But then again, Marquis Xing only had one daughter now. If he did not help his son-in-law, who else could he help? The matter between him and Xiao Jie had been approved by the masters in the Imperial Palace. As long as he mentioned it, the matter would be completed. Chu Qing put aside his doubts about Chu Liuchen and wanted to marry Xiao Jie. He thought it was perfect, but he did not expect that when he went to Marquis Xing's mansion, not only did Marquis Xing not agree directly, but he also suffered a lot of anger. After Chu Qing went out, Chu Liuchen slowly opened his eyes. Rolling his bottomless black pupils, he picked up a piece of jade on the table and played with it a few times with a trace of coldness. Suddenly he asked, "Xiao Xuanzi, what do you think?" Xiao Xuanzi suddenly said, "Marquis Xing will not be willing to marry second Miss Xiao to Commandery Prince Qing. I heard that second Miss Xiao has an extraordinary identity." According to the princess's words, Marquis Xing did not intend to marry second Miss Xiao to Commandery Prince Qing. How could he leave his daughter, who was going to marry into a higher position, to Commandery Prince Qing? Chu Qing is not a man who is willing to suffer losses. Ask someone to spread the news that Xiao Jing is going to ruin Xiao Jie and Chu Qing. Chu Qing is going to Nanjiang as an envoy. At this time, how can he let his wife be cheated away? Chu Liuchen said with a chuckle. Xiao Xuanzi's heart trembled. He knew that this meant that he was going to intervene. If he intervened in this kind of thing, it would definitely become more and more serious in the end. "Yes, I'll give the order now." Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly answered. "Go to the Imperial Palace first. It's not too much for the Imperial Palace to know this kind of thing first, especially the Empress. We have to inform her first, in case she finds out later and gets angry and messes up the rules." Chu Liuchen answered very lazily. If the meaning of his words were heard by others, they would definitely be shocked. Who would have thought that such a prince left by the late emperor, who was dying of illness, could reach into the inner palace and shake the will of the Empress, the master of the inner palace? "Yes, I'll give the order now." Xiao Xuanzi nodded. After thinking for a while, he said, "Should I inform the princess?" Chu Liuchen stood up and said casually, "I will tell the princess. As for other things, the princess has her own ideas. You don't have to interfere. If there is anything related to the princess in the future, you should tell Nanny Zheng, who is serving the princess first. When the princess makes a decision, you should obey her orders." "Yes, I understand." Xiao Xuanzi's eyes lit up and she hurriedly answered. Chapter 903. Xiao Xuanzi had always seen his master's feelings for the princess consort. How could he not know his master's feelings for her? Now he only hoped that the princess consort could reach the marriageable age and give birth to a young master in the mansion. Seeing that his master was no longer lifeless and even disgusted by him, Xiao Xuanzi felt full of energy and was very enthusiastic in everything he did. His master doted on the princess consort very much. He didn't want to wrong the princess consort in some things, so he let the princess consort make her own decisions. As for the princess consort herself, Xiao Xuanzi also admired her very much. The princess consort was not an ordinary person. From a little girl who had just entered the capital city in Jiangzhou, she could get to where she was now step by step. Of course, there was his master's secret help, but also the princess consort's own scheming. Only such a smart princess consort was worthy of such an outstanding master. The princess consort was worthy of this prince's respect and love. When Chu Luchen came back, Xiao Wanru was embroidering a sachet. This sachet was requested by Chu Luchen. He said that he was going to the border and could not make clothes, but the sachet must be made well. Xiao Wanru did intend to embroider a few sachets for him. It was said that there were many snakes and insects in the southern border. Putting some medicine in the sachets could avoid these snakes and insects. Seeing Chu Luchen come in, Xiao Wanru tilted her head to look at him and asked with a smile, "You're leaving just like that?" "Yes, I went to Marquis Xing's mansion to make trouble," Chu Luchen said with a smile. When facing Xiao Wanru, his smile had always been very elegant and gentle, the kind that came from the inside out. He walked to Xiao Wanru's side and sat down. Looking at the sachet in her hand, he smiled even more brightly. If Chu Qing saw Chu Luchen at this moment, he would definitely wonder if he had seen it wrong. Chu Luchen was completely different from the ruthless, cold and bloodthirsty Chu Luchen just now. He was the kind of person who had changed from the inside out. Went to make trouble? Xiao Wanru was stunned. She blinked her watery eyes and immediately understood. She raised the corners of her mouth slightly and said, "Xiaojie?" Yes, Xiaojie was not of much use before. But this time, it is different. Chu Luchen said casually and picked up the sachet in Xiao Wanru's hand. "Hey, be careful. You will prick your hand," Xiao Wanru said anxiously. The needle and thread were still on it. Chu Luchen reached out his hand and looked at Xiao Wanru pitifully with an aggrieved look on his handsome face. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already put his hands on her. He looked very aggrieved. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "Your Highness, I didn't even have time to say anything before you reached out," Xiao Wanru said helplessly. She reached out to take his hand and wanted to check his injury. Unexpectedly, when her hand slid across the sachet, the tip of the needle was still there and pricked her white and tender finger. She stabbed him harder than Chu Luchen, and blood immediately dripped from her fingertips. Chu Luchen's face changed. He grabbed her hand and threw the troublesome sachet aside. Her hand was held by his big hand. Xiao Wanru was about to say that it didn't matter, but she saw that he lowered his head and sucked her finger. With a warm and soft feeling, Xiao Wanru blushed and looked around subconsciously. The servant girls all blushed and nimbly retreated. Every time Wang Yi came, they would leave early. However, they were happy for Wang Fei from the bottom of their hearts. Wang Yi really placed Wang Fei at the top of his heart. Don't. Xiao Wanru blushed. Chu Luchen said, "Look, it doesn't bleed now." Chu Luchen let go of Xiao Wanru's hand and said proudly. The soft feeling was still there. Xiao Wanru didn't know what to do. She hurriedly picked up the handkerchief beside her to wrap her finger and said, How can you do this? Why can't I do this? Your hand is injured. I'm worried." Chu Luchen said. He reached out to pull Xiao Wanru up and naturally pulled her to his lap. Then he reached out to hold her slender waist and said with a smile, "Be careful next time. How can you be so reckless?" Leaning closely against Chu Luchen behind her, Xiao Wanru blushed, but she didn't struggle anymore. It seemed that the process of adaptation was quite fast. However, he was not a man of etiquette. Every time he saw her, he would hold her to feel at ease. After a few days, she got used to it. "Your Highness, you were reckless first," Xiao Wanru said coquettishly. "Okay, it's my fault. I'll be careful next time and won't make Zhuozhuo hurt her hand. You have to be careful next time, or I'll feel sorry for you." Chu Luchen hugged Xiao Wanru tightly and said with a smile. Thinking of how Xiao Wanru had hurt her hand in a panic just now, he smiled as brightly as a flower. Since Xiao Wanru came into his sight, she rarely panicked. But just now, because she was pricked by a needle, she became so flustered. It could be seen that she really cared about him. What else could make him happier than this? Now the little girl he cared about finally belonged to him. Chu Liuchen's heart was full of tenderness. But she was still too young. His eyes fell on Xiao Wanru's chest with regret. What are you looking at?" Xiao Wanru also noticed Chu Liuchen's abnormality. She immediately blushed again, reached out to push Chu Liuchen's handsome face aside and said, "Don't look at her." "Okay, I won't look at her. But I can't even look at my wife." Zhuozhua, tell me, what's the reason? Chu Luchun tilted his head and felt aggrieved. Xiao Wanru was about to blush. Was he still the cold, arrogant and gloomy Prince Qin? How could he be so cheeky? Do you want to see the farce in Marquis Xing's mansion? Seeing that Xiao Wanru was too shy to raise her head, Chu Luchun smacked his lips regretfully. He felt that it was a pity that he couldn't take advantage of the victory at this time, so he could only change the topic and ask, "Can I go and see it?" Xiao Wanru leaned against Chu Luchun's face, and the heat on her face faded a little. As long as she didn't talk about those trivial things, she could still calm down. "Of course you can go if you want to, but I didn't have time to take you to the street before, so I'll take you to the street first," Chu Luchun said casually. When they went back to their mansion, they saw that the sky was not good, so they didn't go to the street. "That's great. Let's go." Xiao Wanru got down from Chu Luchun's legs and said happily, "Let's go to my shop first." She was going to see Nanny Dong, who had sent her a message before, saying that she had something to do. A few days before she was going to get married, all the embroidery products had been sorted out, and all the embroidery maids had left the mansion. When Nanny Dong sent a message, it was the day before she was going to get married, so she had no time to deal with it. Now it had been a few days, and she didn't manage to go back to her mansion yesterday. Xiao Wanru was a little anxious. Knowing that she was in a mess now, Nanny Dong still sent a message to her. It could be seen that there was something urgent. "Well, Zhuozhua, you actually don't want to accompany me to sing in the mansion." Chu Luchun stood up with an aggrieved look, patted the dust on his robe, and looked very depressed. "Come on, I'll accompany you when I come back." Xiao Wanru teased and tugged at his robe, but he reached out to stop her. "Okay, then I'll wait for you to come back." Chu Luchun held her soft little hand with great satisfaction, and then walked to the door and asked Xiao Xuanzi to prepare the carriage. Yu Jie and Chu Lu came out after changing Xiao Wanru's clothes. Chu Luchun sat in the outer room and drank tea. After looking up and down at Xiao Wanru's clothes, he suddenly said, "This dress doesn't look good. Change it." "It doesn't look good? Isn't it pretty?" Xiao Wanru pulled at her dress in surprise. This set of 8-piece jade-colored butterfly-like dress was both simple and beautiful. She really couldn't tell what was not good about it. "It's your wedding day. How can you dress so plainly?" Chu Luchun said plausibly, and then waved his hand and said, "Change it. Go change it." What he said made sense. After thinking for a while, Xiao Wanru went into the inner room with the two maids to change clothes. When she came out again, she was dressed in a bright red brocade dress. Xiao Wanru's bright red dress was in line with her identity as a new bride. The bright red long-winged peacock dress made her look more slender. Xiao Wanru looked up at Xiao Wanru's beautiful eyes and brows. The bright red color made her face, which had a very good complexion, look more lively. She was pure and charming. She looked at Xiao Wanru for thousands of years. Such a bright red dress was actually very in line with Xiao Wanru's temperament. It looked a little different from Xiao Wanru's elegance in the past. The innocence in the charm was fascinating. Chu Luchun suddenly felt uncomfortable. He waved his hand and said, "Change it back, change it back. The previous set looks better." He looked very displeased, which made Xiao Wanru hold back her laughter and change back into her clothes. Looking at Xiao Wanru's clothes, Chu Luchun suddenly felt that this set of clothes was better. At least it looked elegant and hid Xiao Wanru's natural charm a little. He wanted to hide such a delicate and beautiful person alone and not let others see her. After thinking for a while, he ordered Xiao Xuanzi, "Go get a curtain hat." "Yes, master." Xiao Xuanzi ran down happily. "Look, I'm jealous. It's better to wear this kind of elegant dress. It happens that I also like elegant dress. Your outfit is good," Chu Luchun said seriously. Then he thought of the charm he saw just now. He suddenly leaned over and whispered in Xiao Wanru's ear, "Your underwear can be made into this bright red color in the future." The bright red color matched with the snow-white and moist skin, which was beautiful and charming. Chu Luchun felt that he could accept the bright red dress, but he couldn't let others see it. Xiao Wanru was also at a loss at first. But looking at his current look, she understood everything. She reached out and pinched his hand hard, signaling him not to talk nonsense. Chu Luchan took Xiao Wanru's hand naturally and walked out together. The carriage had been prepared. Chu Luchan helped Xiao Wanru get on the carriage first, and then followed her to get on the carriage. After giving an order to the coachman, the carriage turned out of the gate of Prince Chen's mansion and headed for Butterfly Clothing Shop. Chapter 904. Madame Dong had been very anxious these days. She frowned and sat in the room. She couldn't calm down for a while. She didn't expect to see that man again after so many years. It was just that when he saw that man with his wife and daughter, his expectations had long since disappeared. In fact, she should have known that since this man had disappeared for so many years, how could he still miss her? When she left, she knew how powerful his wife was. She originally thought that she might look down on this matter, but now she had to re-examine her mentality. After so many years, she was very confused. A waiter knocked on the door and said, "Shopkeeper, a guest is looking for you. He said that he has something important to tell you." In the past, some important guests would do this, so Madame Dong was used to it. She calmed down and said with a calm face, "Invite the distinguished guest here." The waiter answered and left. After a while, he led a fat middle-aged man to come over. The middle-aged man looked a little excited. He reached out and knocked on the slightly closed door. Madame Dong's voice came from the door, "Please come in." The middle-aged man pushed the door open. When Madame Dong saw the person at the door clearly, she suddenly stood up with a cold look. "Madame Ming, it's really you." The middle-aged man was very excited. Although he had been prepared in his heart, he couldn't help but cry out at this time. Madame Dong looked at the middle-aged man with a pale face, and then calmed down. She turned around, walked to the door of the room, and closed it. Then she returned to the table, pointed to the table in front of her, and said, "Please sit down, sir. What can I do for you?" At this time, the middle-aged man also came to his senses and walked quickly to Madame Dong. His face was pale and excited. "It's really you, Madame Ming. It's me. Don't you recognize me?" Madame Dong suppressed the excitement in her eyes, and her reaction was very cold. "Young Master Wei?" "No, now it should be Master Wei. What does Master Wei want to talk to me about? If there's nothing important, please go back first. I still have a lot of things to deal with here, so I can't accompany you." "Madame Ming, you? How can you do this to me?" Wei Dehai was so excited that he was incoherent, and his fingers trembled on the table. "Mr. Wei's words are really funny. I have nothing to do with you. How can I treat you this way or that way?" Madame Dong sneered and sneered at the man in front of her. Back then, wasn't it all because of this man in front of her that she ended up in such a state? It was so difficult for her to raise a child alone. At the most difficult time, she had hoped to see this man appear in front of her. However, when she was most looking forward to it, she didn't see this man. Now that he appeared in front of her, it was really a joke. Even if she, Dong Ming's mother, was blind, she would never have anything to do with him. "Ming Yang, I had no choice at that time. Didn't I ask you to wait for me? I told you at that time that I would give you a title. I didn't expect you to leave just like that," Wei Dehai said excitedly. Then he looked around. "Where's the child? You had a child at that time. Where's the child now?" Madame Dong looked at the man in front of her coldly. When they met that day, he pretended that he didn't recognize her, but now he put on such an expression, which was really disgusting. "Mr. Wei, please go back. This is a place for women. Aren't you afraid that others will find out that you came here like this? If I ruin Lord Wei's reputation, how can I bear the responsibility?" Madame Dong said coldly, "Madame Ming, don't be like this. I've been looking for you for so many years, but I can't find you. It can't be helped." Wei Dehai said with a wry smile. He picked up the corner of his robe and sat down on a chair on one side. He looked very depressed. "What are you talking about, Mr. Wei? I don't understand. I'm the shopkeeper of this shop. If you really have nothing to say, please go back." Madame Dong said bluntly, "Ming Yang, the matter back then wasn't as simple as you think. I really had no other choice. If I hadn't agreed to the marriage, neither of us would have gotten anything good. You should know my feelings for you. We've been together for so many years, how could I possibly break it just like that? I asked you to wait for me there, but you just had to leave. The world is so big, where would I go to find you? Wei Dahai was also unhappy. He was in a bad mood after being scolded by Madame Dong all the time. I waited there? Waited to be your mistress? Mr. Wei, although I, Madame Dong, am not from a rich family, I have a strong character. Since you won't marry me, why do you have to pretend to keep me here? Madame Dong said coldly, her eyes sharp. Madame Dong said coldly. She pointed outside and said, Mr. Wei, you really don't want to leave? Then I really won't be polite. I'm the daughter of a merchant, so I don't care about face. Since Lord Wei wants to talk openly, then we might as well open the door and open it. Let everyone judge whether you or I was right back then. After saying that, Madame Dong turned around and walked to the door, trying to open the closed door. Seeing this, Wei Dahai was anxious and hurriedly stood up to stop her. Madame Ming, we haven't seen each other for so many years. How can you be so cruel? If this kind of thing is spread out, it will be bad for you. I have inquired about it before. I know that you have only one child for so many years. You have suffered a lot. This time I found you, I won't let you suffer like this again. She had inquired so clearly, so she came prepared? Madame Dong took a step back to avoid Wei Dahai. She looked him up and down and sneered, What? You don't dare to do that. Why did you come here? If you don't leave, I can open the door. After that, she was about to go to the door again. Hey, I'll go back first. Think about it carefully. I really want to protect you. You have suffered a lot over the years, and now it's time to enjoy your happiness. Looking at Madame Dong, Wei Dahai knew that he shouldn't push her too hard at this time. Madame Dong used to be like this, and now after so many years, she was still the same. Go quickly. Madame Dong said coldly. I'll go. I'll come back next time. Wei Dahai didn't dare to push her anymore. He could only leave these words and leave. Watching Wei Dahai leave, Madame Dong's cold face changed a little, and then her eyes turned red. How could she be so blind as to fall in love with such a person? Originally, she thought he was responsible, but she didn't expect that he was simply a coward. When she left home with him, she first accompanied him to look for his aunt. Later, she couldn't find her, so she stayed together and prepared to wait for him to pass the exam. After the exam, they would officially get married. Unexpectedly, as soon as he passed the exam, he was immediately chosen and recruited as a son-in-law. All this was told to her by the neighbor next to her. When she found out about the matter and questioned Wei Dahai about it, he kept avoiding the topic. In the end, she was forced to tell the truth. He wanted her to be his mistress and said that he would always support her. He also said that he would only have her in his heart. However, the current situation did not allow them to become husband and wife. All the vows of undying love in the past had become a bubble. Madame Dong could hardly believe that the person in front of her would be the one she had decided to marry. In fact, the reason why she followed him to the capital was that her parents recognized him and treated him as a son-in-law. Although Madame Dong's family was not rich, at least they had no worries about food and clothing. Her parents opened a small business and had enough money to support the whole family. Wei Dahai was nothing before. He was just a helper in their family, but he was clever and good at studying. Seeing that he was good-looking, diligent, and well-educated, his parents arranged a marriage for them. After that, he said that he wanted to go to the capital to take the Imperial examinations and asked his aunt, who lived in the capital, to make the decision to marry them. Only then did the two of them go to the capital together. Later, he did pass the exam, but the bride was not her. How could Madame Dong be willing to stay with him and be an illegitimate mistress? Later, she packed up some things and left. However, as a woman alone and pregnant, she was depressed. She fell ill halfway on the way back to her hometown, so she could only rent a house to recuperate. Later, after giving birth to Dong Xiu'er, she simply settled down and did not want to go back to her hometown to be shameful. When Dong Xiu'er was in poor health, she once thought of going to the capital city to find Wei Dahai. She did not ask him to take them in, but hoped that he could save Dong Xiu, or for the sake of his daughter. At that moment, she still had some expectations for Wei Dahai. But now, when they met again, it was a mess. "Madame Dong, the princess is here to see you." A clear voice suddenly came from the door. Madame Dong looked up and found that it was Yu Jie. She immediately knew that Xiao Wanru had come. She hurriedly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and was about to go out to welcome her. "Madame Dong, don't come out. The princess will come in by herself." Yu Jie winked at Madame Dong and said mischievously. Madame Dong immediately understood what Yu Jie meant. The princess did not want others to know that the behind-the-scenes boss of the shop was the princess. So she nodded at once, calmed down, and stood in the room waiting for Xiao Wanru to come over. Xiao Wanru entered the room with Chu Lu, but Yu Jie did not come in. After closing the door, she stood outside the door. "Greetings, Your Highness." Madame Dong stepped forward and saluted. Xiao Wanru waved her hand and said with a smile, "Madame Dong, you're too polite." As she said that, she went behind the desk, sat down on the large chair, and asked straightforwardly, "Madame Dong, you asked me to come here in a hurry these days. Is there anything urgent that can't be dealt with?" "Your Highness, Dong Xiuer's father came here. I'm afraid that he will be afraid of your important matter." Madame Dong calmed down again and answered calmly. Originally, she had thought that he might come here, fearing that he would ruin the princess's matter. But now he really came here. Her words were really unexpected. Xiao Wanru blinked in surprise, and a trace of deepness flashed across her watery eyes. It was not that she did not understand, but she just felt strange. This kind of thing was Madame Dong's private matter. In fact, there was no need for her to come here in such a hurry, let alone make it so clear to her. Chapter 905. Your Highness, I think he has something to do with Marquis Xing. Seeing Xiao Wanru frowning slightly, Madame Dong didn't hide it and said bluntly. "He has something to do with second uncle?" Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat, and her watery eyes slowly became cold. "Yes, I didn't see Marquis Xing when I was in Marquis Xing's mansion, but when I went out on the last day, I happened to see him. He also saw me at that time and was very surprised. Then I remembered second young Master Xiao." Madame Dong gritted her teeth and said, "What the hell is going on?" Xiao Wanru asked in confusion. Madame Dong pulled herself together and slowly talked about the past. Originally, she was not very sure about Marquis Xing's identity, but since her ex-husband came, she immediately figured out the strangeness of it. Although it was an accident that she met Wei Dahai that day, it was obviously not an accident that Wei Dahai met her. He should have known it long ago. Otherwise, he couldn't have been so calm and didn't even glance at her. Obviously, he had known her long ago, and the only person who had met her and had a relationship with him was second young Master Xiao. The former second young Master Xiao was now Marquis Xiao. Xiao Jing also played a part in the past between Madame Dong and Wei Dahai. At that time, Xiao Jing was just an ordinary child from an aristocratic family in Marquis Xing's mansion. Although he was the legitimate son, it was impossible for him to inherit the position of the heir of the mansion. The legitimate eldest son had long become the heir of the mansion. As the second son of the legitimate wife, he was not valued by his parents and made friends with people from all walks of life. However, since he was the legitimate son of an aristocratic family and had no possibility of inheriting the title, he had been studying since he was a child. Coincidentally, he and Wei Dahai were in the same subject. Moreover, both of them had passed the exam. Although their rankings were almost the lowest, they had at least passed the exam. Because of such a low ranking, the two of them actually became friends. After Madame Dong knew about Wei Dahai's affair, second young Master Xiao specially came to persuade Madame Dong to be Wei Dahai's mistress. He also said that even if Wei Dahai married that lady, he would always come here. He even promised that no one would find out that he was Madame Dong's mistress. Why can't we find anything? Hearing Nanny Dong's words, Xiao Wanru couldn't help but be suspicious. There was no impenetrable wall in the world. How could Xiao Jing be so sure that he could keep it a secret at that time? Your Highness, second young Master Xiao said that he would rent a courtyard for me and let me live in it. Even if the miss from an aristocratic family that Wei Dahai married came, she wouldn't find out that she was Wei Dahai's mistress. She would only think that she was second young Master Xiao's mistress. Madame Dong gritted her teeth and said, she was a woman, but her reputation was ruined by Wei Dahai and Xiao Jing. Isn't he afraid that Duke Xing's mansion will make trouble for him? Xiao Wanru felt that something was wrong. When had Xiao Jing been so enthusiastic? With his temperament, how could he do something that was good for others but not beneficial to himself? I don't know. At that time, he didn't say which mansion he was from. I only heard Wei Dahai call him second young Master Xiao, and he seemed to be very skillful. Madame Dong said angrily. She didn't have a good impression of second young Master Xiao, who helped Wei Dahai. He recognized you as soon as he saw you, and then Wei Dahai came to check it out. How could it happen so fast? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said to herself. She really felt very strange and felt that something was wrong. I also feel strange. Marquis Xiao is really enthusiastic. After so many years, he still remembers me. Madame Dong said with a hint of sarcasm in her words. He does care about you a little too much. Besides, after so many years, hasn't Madame Dong changed much? Xiao Wanru looked Madame Dong up and down and couldn't figure it out. Madame Dong didn't live a good life before, and she looked much older than her peers. Could she really remember someone whom she had only met a few times many years ago? What was more, she was just a girl who had nothing to do with Xiao Jing. Even if Madame Dong left at that time, she didn't have much karma with Xiao Jing. How could he recognize Madame Dong at a glance? How did Madame Dong recognize second uncle? Xiao Wanru decided to ask in the opposite direction. Second young Master Xiao used to be kind and amiable. He would smile at everyone he met and had a good temper. He was different from others. Even after so many years have passed, he is just a little older and looks a little more dignified. Other than that, he hasn't changed much. Madame Dong said slowly. After so many years, second young Master Xiao didn't change much. Moreover, he looked different from others, so it was easy to recognize him. Xiao Jing was easy to recognize, but what about Madame Dong? Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on Madame Dong again. Madame Dong didn't look like the kind of person who was easy to recognize. Although she could vaguely tell from her eyes that she should have been a beauty when she was young, her current image should be ordinary, so she might not be recognized in a crowd. She didn't believe that Xiao Jing would remember an insignificant girl so many years ago. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice, and she suddenly remembered something. She had seen Xiao Jing at the door of Butterfly Clothing Shop. Could it be that Xiao Jing had been eyeing Butterfly Clothing Shop at that time? This could explain why he knew that she was the shopkeeper of Butterfly Clothing Shop as soon as he saw Madame Dong. When you saw second uncle at that time, did you look different? Xiao Wanru asked. Yes, when I saw second young Master Xiao, I froze there. If it weren't for others urging me to go, I wouldn't have been able to take a step at that time. Madame Dong lowered her head. She was so shocked at that time that she almost couldn't believe that she had seen second young Master Xiao. At that time, her idea was to escape quickly and not let second young Master Xiao find her. However, she was stunned there, and then saw second young Master Xiao turn his head and look at her seriously and examine her. Xiao Wanru ignored Madame Dong's words and asked, "He saw you and then carefully identified you before he recognized you?" "That should be the case." Madame Dong nodded and thought it made sense. Xiao Wanru fell silent for a moment and connected the dots in her heart. At first, Xiao Jing noticed her Butterfly Clothing Shop, so he should have seen Nanny Dong. Then he saw Nanny Dong in the mansion and Nanny Dong was stunned. He recognized Nanny Dong and found out that Nanny Dong knew him. After that, he didn't know if he remembered or if someone found something, but Wei Dahai came looking for him. If she thought about it this way, why did Xiao Jing pay attention to her Butterfly Clothing Shop? She didn't think that her Butterfly Clothing Shop there was something surprising about it. "I met a middle-aged man on the road just now. Is he?" Xiao Wanru asked softly. "Wei Dahai?" "Yes, it's him. He happened to meet his wife that day, so he came over to have a look and confirm my identity." I've checked and found that his wife had ordered a dress from us before, using our new toggle and loop buttons. Madame Dong also came to her senses at this time and analyzed in a very orderly way. Then she added, Your Highness, does he suspect that you are the owner of this shop? Xiao Wanru shook her head and said, It can't be because of this. There were so many shops in the capital city, so it was impossible for Xiao Jing to suddenly pay attention to an inconspicuous shop, let alone a shop for women. If it weren't for this reason, why would he pay attention to our shop? Madame Dong frowned. When she was not thinking about Wei Dehai, she was still very sober. Our shop has always been accompanied by women, and there is nothing eye-catching about it. Even at the beginning, I used to wear the clothes here and attract everyone's attention, but it was only because of the relationship between women. Second uncle couldn't have noticed it because of this. Moreover, even if it is my shop, so what? There are many shops in my mother's dowry, and now they are all in my hands. Xiao Wanru said. Miss, could it be because of the embroidery shop? Chu Lu suddenly said on the side. Fanglan embroidery shop? Madame Dong's eyes lit up. Xiao Wanru's eyes also became gloomy. Fanglan embroidery shop was definitely not only owned by Duke Yong's mansion. The previous probe had allowed Xiao Wanru to find out something about it. It had something to do with Prince Yu's mansion. So who was Xiao Jing probing for? He was looking at her from Fanglan embroidery shop. Originally, she was not afraid of being stared at. She was a weak girl in a boudoir, and she was really doing business. Even if she was stared at by Chu Luiyue, it didn't matter. But now she couldn't think like this. Now she was married to Chu Luiyue. No matter what happened, others would first think of Chu Luiyue. Her long eyelashes, which were as long as butterfly wings, fluttered twice. Her red lips slightly pursed, and her eyes became deep. Has there been any movement in Fanglan embroidery shop recently? Madame Dong thought for a moment and said, There hasn't been any movement. I borrowed some silver from them as you instructed, but they haven't returned yet. The two families were originally financing each other, so they didn't have much contact with each other. Xiao Wanru had already made a decision in her heart and said lightly, Ask Fanglan embroidery shop for silver. Just say that the boss wants to use it for something important. I hope Fanglan embroidery shop can pay off the money as soon as possible. She had originally wanted to get Fanglan embroidery shop, but Fanglan embroidery shop was targeted by Xiao Jing. It was better to have a clear relationship with her. Moreover, there were some other buried roots that could be dug out. This was originally a trap set by her at the beginning. Don't worry, Your Highness. I understand. Madame Dong had long known Xiao Wanru's plan, so she immediately nodded. The matter of Fanglan embroidery shop had been buried for 3 years. Although it was a little hasty to dig it out now, it was not a complete panic. Now Madame Dong admired the princess in front of her more and more. At that time, she was only 11 years old, and the matter had been buried for 3 years. Chapter 906. Xiao Wanru didn't wait long in Butterfly Clothing Shop. After talking with Nanny Dong for a while, she turned around and walked out of Nanny Dong's room. Nanny Dong respectfully sent her to the door of the room. This was what she did to every distinguished guest, so it wouldn't arouse others' suspicion. Yu Jie waited at the door. Seeing Xiao Wanru come out, she put on the curtain hat for Xiao Wanru and then followed her to the second floor. There was a resting place there, where Chu Luchen was sitting and waiting for her. Seeing her come over, Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows and asked lazily, How is it going? Fortunately, I'm fine. Xiao Wanru said vaguely. Can you deal with it? No problem. Knowing that Chu Luchen was worried about her, Xiao Wanru slightly curved her lips and said, I've been preparing for it before. Now I just need to mobilize them, but I may need Qing to help me collect some things. Of course, Qing was not the only one who needed to collect some things. The 2 secret guards that Chu Luchen had assigned to Xiao Wanru must be requisitioned. Although they had entered Prince Chen's mansion, Xiao Wanru didn't intend to return the 2 secret guards to Chu Luchen. 2 may not be enough. I'll give you 2 more. Chu Luchen smiled lightly, reached out to pull her up and asked gently, Do you like any clothes? Can you make 2 sets of them? But Xiao Wanru nodded happily. Since she couldn't let others know that she came to see Nanny Dong today, it was necessary for her to be an ordinary customer. She asked a shop assistant standing aside to bring a few bolts of satin. Xiao Wanru picked a few bolts of satin and asked the shop assistant to make clothes according to the most fashionable patterns at present. After the tailor finished, the two of them went out with a group of servants. After the two of them got on the carriage, they went to a gold jewelry shop this time. Xiao Wanru picked a few sets of jewelry before leaving. After the two of them left, someone who was secretly watching them turned around and went back to report to his master. Chu Liuchen's body is still strong inside but weak inside. Chu Luiwei sneered when he got the news. The news that Chu Luchen didn't consummate their marriage that night had long been spread to him. He was relieved but also felt that it should be so. Even if Chu Luchen looked like a normal person now, in fact, he was not very normal. He had been sick for such a long time. Even if he was better now, it was impossible for him to be much better. Mr. Lu, do you think his body has really recovered, or does he have other plans and is bluffing? He was asking his advisor, Mr. Lu, who was sitting on the side. Your Highness, this subordinate feels that this matter is not that simple. Mr. Lu shook his head. He was a failed Shiozai, but he was very intelligent. However, he was unlucky. Chu Luiwei heard of his reputation and secretly recruited him. Mr. Lu means that he was pretending? But he didn't consummate the marriage. Chu Luiwei said with certainty. On the day when Chu Luchen and Xiao Wanru entered the palace the next day after they got married, a nanny had already seen that Xiao Wanru was still a young girl, and there was nothing wrong with her. There were many sharp-eyed nannies in the palace. They could tell whether a person had lost his virginity from his walking posture, movements, and some small behaviors. Although it wasn't very accurate with some of the smaller rumors behind it, it was something that was in the bag. He probably didn't consummate the marriage, but Mr. Lu thought for a moment and said, in fact, he didn't understand why his master was so focused on whether Prince Chen had consummated the marriage or not. This kind of thing was neither big nor small. It was just a boudoir pleasure, so there was no need to pay so much attention to it. Whether Prince Chen consummated the marriage or not, it had nothing to do with the big picture. What Prince Yu wanted to see was a broader side, not these trivial matters of love. Moreover, even if he didn't consummate the marriage, fifth Miss Xiao was now Princess Chen and had nothing to do with others, let alone Prince Yu. Mr. Lu coughed in a low voice and reminded Chu Liwei, Your Highness, whether Prince Chen consummated the marriage or not, this trip to the southern border is an opportunity. What opportunity? Chu Liwei frowned and said, Do something to Chu Luchen? If Chu Luchen, the patient, continued to be ill, he didn't think it was dangerous. Even if he took the throne in the future, he was willing to keep him alive for the sake of his reputation. But now he didn't think so, and he didn't want to keep Chu Luchen as an eyesore. Mr. Lu coughed in a low voice again. He felt that this prince of his was a little obsessed. In the past, the number one beauty in the capital, eldest Miss Xiao, did not make the prince so obsessed. This fifth Miss Xiao did have some ability, but he did not know what kind of seductive look she had. Your Highness, I'm talking about Commandery Prince Qing. Mr. Lu said bluntly. Do something to Chu Qing and then push the blame to Chu Luchen? Chu Liwei raised his head and patted the table gently. It doesn't have to be like this. You can also do something to Prince Qin and push the blame to Commandery Prince Qing. Mr. Lu said with a hidden meaning. Of course, he meant that the two of them should do it themselves. No matter who won or lost, it had nothing to do with Chu Liwei. He only needed to hide behind and watch the show. Will Chu Qing do something to Chu Luchen? Chu Liwei chose a better plan. Compared with making it seem that Chu Luchen did something to Chu Qing, it was better for Chu Qing to do something to Chu Luchen. If Chu Luchen did something to Chu Qing, even if it was Chu Luchen who was found to be the culprit, his father, who was partial to Chu Luchen, and his grandmother, who was very partial to Chu Luchen, would definitely protect Chu Luchen. As long as Chu Luiwei thought of this, he couldn't control his anger. Chu Liuzhou was not as good as Chu Liuzhou. After all, Chu Liuzhou was the legitimate son, and the legitimate son of the empress in the Imperial palace was not comparable to an ordinary prince. But what about Chu Luchen? Not only did he have no parents, but he was also a threat to his father's throne. Although it had been so many years, many old ministers still respected Chu Luchun faintly, as if he was the legitimate heir of the dynasty, and they, including Chu Liuzhou, were not as legitimate as Chu Luchun. As long as he thought of the behavior of those old ministers, Chu Luiwei was very upset. He had always wanted to win over those ministers, but they had never made a decision. They seemed to be impartial, but they also seemed to respect Chu Luchun very much. Even if they don't, we can make it seem that although Commandery Prince Qing is also the son of the former emperor, he is obviously not as good as Prince Qin. Moreover, I heard that Commandery Prince Qing has always wanted to please Prince Qin, but he is rarely allowed to enter Prince Chen's mansion. It can be seen that Prince Qin doesn't like his brother very much. Of course, Commandery Prince Qing won't like Prince Qin either. If there is no Prince Qin, he will be the only son of the former emperor. With such an identity, he may be favored by the emperor and the empress dowager. Mr. Lu said meaningfully. Chu Luiwei understood his words very well. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, "Then please think of a safe way, Mr. Lu. It's better to add fuel to the fire and let Chu Qing take action directly. If he can't do it directly, he should make it seem that he did it. Don't worry, Your Highness. I will think of a safer way first. Nanjiang is remote. Even if the Empress Dowager and the Emperor pay attention to Prince Qin, there will be times when they can't reach there. The affairs of the Su state can be big or small. Even if he doesn't enter the Su state, he may be harmed." Mr. Lu said with a confident smile. Commandery Prince Qing's foundation was too shallow. Even if he recruited some guards later, it was actually easy for him to put people in. What's more, after Commandery Prince Qing was conferred the title, he recruited all kinds of people wantonly. Even the servants in his mansion were sent by Prince Yu's mansion. Of course, it was not only Prince Yu's mansion. Those who should do it would do it. In fact, Commandery Prince Qing's mansion was like a leaky place, with not many secrets. In fact, it did not mean that everyone paid special attention to Chu Qing. It was just a regular operation, and they did not need to spend too much effort. They could send a few people in at any time, and when they were not needed, they would not ask them to report or do anything. They could only take action when there was a special need. In this way, it would be seamless. Of course, if Mr. Lu knew that it was not Chu Qing's people who leaked the information, but their people, he would not think so at this time. Chu Luwei cupped his hands to Mr. Lu and thanked him. "Thank you, Mr. Lu. What do you think of Qi Tianyu?" Mr. Lu was now Chu Liyue's top advisor. Although when Shiqi was smarter than others, he always felt that he was absent-minded recently. Sometimes when he asked him, when Shiqi seemed to be thinking about something, Chu Luiwei felt that it was better to discuss it with Mr. Lu. Since Qi Tianyu agreed to let his sister marry into Prince Zhou's mansion, he is still loyal to Your Highness. But if his sister gives birth to a child in the future, I can't guarantee that he will still be so loyal to Your Highness. Mr. Lu said slowly. Chu Luiwei nodded repeatedly. He understood what Mr. Lu meant. Originally, he wanted to marry Qi Rongji this time, which was discussed with Qi Tianyu before. But later, after discussing with his advisors, he felt that it was better to send Qi Rongji to Prince Zhou's mansion. In the future, she would be a spy buried beside Prince Zhou and could play a special role at the most critical time. Qi Tianyu was unwilling to make this decision at first, but later, Chu Luiwei repeatedly promised that when he ascended to a high position in the future, he would not treat Qi Rongji badly. Even if she could not be the empress, she would definitely be a high-ranking concubine in the harem, such as the Imperial noble consort, and he said that he would not be ungrateful. Of course, Qi Tianyu's future official career would be very smooth. Of course, if he didn't agree, it would be the opposite. With these guarantees and threats from Chu Luiwei, Qi Tianyu had to agree. Since he had already been on Chu Luiwei's boat, he had to agree to this matter and send his sister to Prince Zhou's place as a spy. Give her the medicine to cut off her child. Chu Luiwei said coldly. I understand. Mr. Lu nodded. This was originally his idea. In this case, in order to ensure the loyalty of Qi Rongji and Qi Rongji, he could only do this. Chapter 907. As soon as Xiao Wanru and Chu Luchen entered the mansion, Chu Luchen was called to the front yard. Knowing that he had something to do, Xiao Wanru went back to the main courtyard in the back alone. Now there were only 2 masters in Prince Chen's mansion. Although there was still a front yard and a backyard, it was only for the servants in the mansion. There was nothing to divide the 2 masters. After returning to the room, Xiao Wanru asked Qing, come over and tell her something. Then Chu Lu also left the mansion and went to the Qin's mansion. She wanted to meet Qin Shui, who stayed in the Qin's mansion, with the excuse of going to the Qin's mansion to send gifts. When she finished her work, it was time for lunch. Xiao Xuanzi came to tell Chu Luchen that he would not come at noon because he had something to do and asked Xiao Wanru to have lunch by herself. Qing was very efficient. In the afternoon, she sent the news. The reason why she was so fast was partly because Xiao Wanru had planted the mole long ago, and partly because Chu Luchen had good secret guards. Now there were 2 more secret guards, so Qing, who had 4 secret guards, got the news faster. Chu Lu came back a little later, but she had got all the news she needed. Qin Shui had been secretly sorting out the news about Madame D and Qin Yuru in the Qin's mansion, waiting to send it to Xiao Wanru when she needed it. Madame D was not very useful at the moment. She had been recuperating in the backyard and had been in poor health. She couldn't get up or meet guests because of her illness, so all the affairs in the mansion were managed by Shui Rulin. After 3 years, Shui Rulin had gained a firm foothold in the Qin's mansion. Even though she was in charge of the affairs of Ningyuan Army General's mansion as a co-wife, no one said anything. Everyone knew that Shui Rulin gave birth to Qin Huayong's only child and was valued by old Madame Qin. Even Qin Huayong doted on her wholeheartedly. Even if there were other concubines in the mansion, they couldn't step on her. As for Madame D, she had long been out of power. If it weren't for Duke Yong's mansion, the legal wife, Madame D, might have died of illness early. Even if she didn't die of illness now, few people would take Madame D seriously. Even the first miss of Duke Yong's mansion was said to have a bad life and even had a miscarriage a few days ago. It was said that this matter made a big fuss in Duke Yong's mansion, and even Madame D was alarmed. Later, Qin Yuru even went back to Qin's mansion. As for what they talked about specifically, Qin Shui did not know. After listening to their reports, Xiao Wanru pondered for a while. She had no sympathy for Qin Yuru's situation at all. She deserved it and couldn't blame others. What she needed to do was to help her recognize the facts. After being reborn, she would only leave her affection to those who were kind to her. Then she ordered Qing to do something. She had already told Madame Dong to do something. Everything was just waiting for the next thing. Madam, after young master came back, he went directly to the west courtyard. Mei Shui hurriedly came in. Now living in the west courtyard was a girl in black whom Di Yen had just found a few days ago. She was extremely charming. Qin Yuru had seen her when she entered the courtyard before, but that girl didn't take Qin Yuru seriously. Madam, what should we do? Should we tell old Madam? Mei Yen said. The 2 of them married into Duke Yong's mansion with Qin Yuru, but they didn't have a good life in Duke Yong's mansion. What's the use of going there? Qin Yuru said in a sharp voice. Now she was no longer the daughter of the Qins 3 years ago. Although she successfully married into Duke Yong's mansion, the whole Duke Yong's mansion couldn't take her seriously. Only old Madam took it seriously, but even old Madam always took Di Yan's side in the dispute between her and Di Yan. Every time she couldn't figure it out, old Madam would repeatedly hint that if Di Yan didn't marry her in that situation, she would really die. In this way, Di Yan was still her savior, and she had to give in to him in everything. This kind of words had already made Qin Yuru impatient, and every time it was mentioned, Qin Yuru was even more annoyed. That was her unspeakable past, and it was also the biggest stain and scar in her life. She originally wanted to hide it in her heart, but from time to time, it would be exposed, revealing the pus inside. This kind of feeling was no longer just anger, resentment. She resented all of it. She reached out and touched her shriveled belly, with hatred in her eyes. This was not the first child she had miscarried. How could she not hate? If Di Yan hadn't done it every time, she wouldn't have lost her child. She had married into Duke Yong's mansion for 3 years. In these 3 years, Her health had suffered again and again. It was because Di Yen had brought other women into the mansion one by one. Not only did he bring fragrant and smelly women into the mansion, but he also made things difficult for her and even didn't give her any dignity. Now he even caused her child to miscarry again. Thinking of the doctor's words, she almost gnashed her teeth with hatred. If she went on like this, it was almost impossible for her to have children in the future. If she had no children, Di Yen would not have any. Does concubine Tao, who is pregnant, know about this? Qin Yuru said coldly. Her face was so thin that her bones could be seen. She didn't look like a young child's wife, but like an old woman who was always gloomy. There was no emotion in her eyes, only resentment. In places where the sun didn't shine, her expression was even colder. Concubine Tao used to be the most favored concubine, and now she got whatever she wanted in the Fu. The reason for this was because she was pregnant. Yes, I have secretly informed her servant girl. Mei Shui said in a low voice. This is not enough. You have to make it more severe. Qin Yuru said coldly, looking like a ferocious ghost. Now that she couldn't get better, she wouldn't let others get better, especially Di Yen. Her whole life was ruined by Di Yen. If Di Yen hadn't seduced her early, she would have married her favorite Qi Tianyu, and her reputation wouldn't have been ruined. It was all because of Di Yen. Now Di Yen was still the child, but she had withered. This kind of hatred almost made her want to overturn the whole Duke Yong's mansion. How could they live well? They hurt her. How could she let them live well? Yes, I will go in a moment. Mei Shui hurriedly lowered her head and didn't dare to stay any longer. She turned back to the inner room to take some things and hurried out. These were all prepared by the child's wife. Madam, the doctor is here. A servant girl reported at the door. Qin Yuru nodded. Mei Yen hurried to the door to bring in a doctor. This was not the doctor who usually treated Duke Yong's mansion, but another Dr. Qin Yuru specially found from outside. He was a doctor in his 50s or 60s, who looked quite dignified. When they entered, they saw the curtain inside. The doctor first bowed in the direction of the curtain, and then they heard a slow voice saying, Doctor, you don't have to be so polite. Please treat my illness. If there is anything, please tell me. Madam, rest assured. I will find something, the doctor said. Qin Yuru nodded and slowly stretched out her hand from the edge of the curtain. Mei Yen picked up the medicine pillow on the side and put her hand on it. She didn't believe in the doctor of Duke Yong's mansion who had been treating her. She wanted to know her real situation. After the abortion, she felt that her condition was not good. The doctor seemed to want to say something but stopped on second thought. However, old Madam and Countess Yong were there at that time. After she asked him, he didn't give her a definite answer. He said that if she continued to do this, it would be a hindrance to her children. Qin Yuru reached out to touch her belly, and a trace of crazy hatred flashed in her eyes. She hated Duke Yong's mansion, Di Yen, Countess Yong, and old Madam. They were the ones who had destroyed her. If she hadn't quarreled with Di Yen and pushed her this time, she would have fallen to the ground, and the child in her belly would have been fine. Now all this was because of them. She put a silk curtain on her hand. The doctor pressed his hand on it, felt her pulse, and frowned. Doctor, how is my body? Qin Yuru sat on the bed and asked coldly. Madam's body is not very good and... The doctor paused and looked like he wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Mei Yen waved her hand, and all the other servant girls and old maids left. Doctor, now there are only me and my principal servant girl. Please tell me. Although Qin Yuru didn't have much hope, she was still very nervous. Madam's body was injured before, and now she is injured again. I am afraid it is difficult for her to get pregnant again. Besides, did Madam use any bad medicine in the end? The doctor said clearly. What bad medicine? Qin Yuru trembled all over and stared at the doctor through the gauze curtain. Just some medicine to recover as soon as possible. This kind of medicine may be very good for restoring Madam's figure, but it is not good for Madam's body. Especially in this case, using this medicine will make Madam. The doctor paused again and seemed to be thinking about what to say. Doctor, please tell me. Chin Yuru clenched the corner of the quilt under her with the other hand. Have no children forever. These words were not loud, but they were buzzing in Chin Yuru's ears. Have no children forever? How could he make her have no children forever? Unconsciously, a chuckle overflowed from her throat, with a hint of madness. Madam, don't be sad. Don't worry, maybe there are other possibilities. Mayan was anxious and comforted Chin Yuru, who was inside the quilt. The crazy laughter inside the quilt stopped for a moment and then slowly returned to calm. After a long time, a voice came out again. When did it happen? It should have happened in a few days. It may be the medicine Madam used after her miscarriage, or it may be that the medicine accidentally collided with each other. The doctor said cautiously. It was the most difficult to talk about the secret affairs of such a rich family. Now he was very regretful that he came here for a big sum of money and told the truth. Madam, if you don't believe me, you can ask another doctor to take a look. Maybe I am old and can't see clearly. The doctor stood up and said in a panic. He wanted to get out of this. No one dared to get involved in this kind of thing, and he even thought that he would rather not get the consultation fee. Doctor, take care. I have another thing to trouble you. Chin Yuru said, Mayan, bring me the medicine I took before and let the doctor have a look. Chapter 908. The latest chapter on medical knowledge of Crown Princess. Update the latest chapter on the Crown Princess's medical skills as soon as possible. Can I still be saved? Chin Yuru almost crumpled the quilt in her hands, and her voice almost came out from the gaps between her teeth. Can I still be saved? Chin Yuru almost crumpled the quilt in her hands into a ball, and her voice almost came out from the gaps between her teeth. I'm incompetent. Maybe we can find some good Imperial physicians, and maybe you can be saved. The doctor did not dare to give a definite answer, and only said vaguely, Doctor, please go to the side and give me a prescription. Chin Yuru's hands and feet were cold. The doctor breathed a sigh of relief, and hurriedly followed a little servant girl to the side room to open a pharmacy. Madam, Mayan timidly said into the gauze curtain. Chin Yuru's silence made her tremble with fear. If I can't give birth to a child, Dian can't have any more children. Chin Yuru said harshly, and her voice was so cold that it seemed to come from hell. Let's go and see the fun. Madam, you'd better not go. If you go, you may be blamed again. Mayan hurriedly went forward to open the gauze curtain and persuaded. How can I be reconciled if I don't see what will happen to them? Chin Yuru said coldly, and her face was cold. She was not the person she was 3 years ago. If she was 3 years ago, she would definitely go to old Madam and cry at this time. She knew that it was useless now. Even though the medicine was sent by Countess Yong, even if they found out something, they could not do anything to Countess Yong. No one in the mansion had ever been on her side. Just like this miscarriage. It was clearly Di Yan's fault, but in the end he pushed all the blame onto her. He blamed her for being careless even though she was pregnant and causing trouble, causing a perfectly good child to be lost. Di Yan's mother also pointed at the mulberry tree and scolded the locust tree, and said that this matter could not be over. She said that after she recovered, she should go to the Buddhist temple to cultivate and get rid of the bad luck. To get rid of the bad luck, she wanted to see who was the most unlucky one. Even though the backyard was controlled by Countess Yong, after so many years, she had made some progress. Chin Yuru took Mei Yen to an attic. When the window on the second floor was opened, they could see the yard below. The yard was empty before, but now it was very lively. The one in the lead was an aggressive young woman with a protruding belly. In fact, her belly didn't look very big, but the way she held her waist made it seem as if she was about to give birth. However, the expression on her face was overbearing. It was not early for them to come here. They should have been here for a while. The one facing this group of people was also a young woman with only a servant girl. However, the servant girl looked shrewish. She came over and pushed away the 2 old maids who rushed over from the opposite side. 2 of the 2 old maids were pushed back by her, and one even fell to the ground. Suddenly, The pregnant woman became angry and shouted that she wanted to drag the pair of master and servant on the opposite side out and beat them to death. It happened in this way. Qin Yuru came not too late. When she happened to see the two sides pulling each other, the pregnant concubine Tao was hit by someone. She lost her balance and fell to the ground. Then she let out a sharp scream. Everyone's hands stopped, some people screamed and ran out, some people immediately went to help concubine Tao, and some people rushed into the room to get a soft blanket, wanting to wrap concubine Tao up. In the crowd. Outside the room, Mei Shui slipped away quietly. No one found that she had been here. Qin Yuru saw it clearly. She sneered and looked down with cold eyes. She said to herself, "Good fall." Another one fell. Look, even God can't stand it. He even lost another child. Duke Yong's mansion can't give birth to children, and they are going to die without descendants. These words were very insidious. Mei Yan lowered her head tightly and didn't dare to answer. This kind of thing happened a lot. Almost all the pregnant concubines didn't give birth to children. Once the child was 8 months old, but it still died. Of course, it was because of her wife. She wants to give birth to a son of a concubine before the legitimate son is born. Qin Yuru was very satisfied with the tragic scene below. She watched for a while and saw the doctor hurriedly run in with an old maid. Then she turned and left. Her cold face also showed a trace of a smile because she saw this scene. She was really happy to see that Di Yan's woman couldn't give birth to a child. After such a thing happened, the servants of Duke Yong's mansion didn't dare to say hello when they saw each other. They just looked at each other and then bowed their heads and left. However, even if they really heard the woman scream in the yard, they just slowed down a little and then continued to do what they should do, as if they were very used to this thing. This kind of thing was rarely encountered in other mansions, but it was indeed common in Duke Yong's mansion. In the past 3 years, it had happened several times. There were many women in the backyard of the heir of Prince, and many of them were pregnant. However, not to mention concubines and concubines, even the wife of Prince had a miscarriage several times. She just had a miscarriage a few days ago. Now she was just a concubine. Even if she was a favored concubine, she was just a concubine. The originally favored concubine, because of jealousy of the new indecent servant, came over angrily to quarrel. Unexpectedly, something happened in the shoving. After falling, she miscarried. My previous son's wife also fell down. The wife of Prince had been married for 3 years, but in the past 3 years, no child was born in Duke Yong's mansion. The servants all secretly talked about it and said that the wife of Prince was not good. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become more and more unlucky, and such things happened more and more. Of course, there were also people who said that Duke Yong's mansion was unfair. Since they had married her, even if their reputation was damaged, they were willing to marry her. Moreover, she was the granddaughter of old madam. Why didn't they treat her well? Before the legitimate son was born, they wanted to give birth to a concubine's son. Now, not only did they not give birth to a son, but they also did not give birth to a daughter. This made everyone very nervous, for fear that one of them would accidentally have a miscarriage. But no matter what, this thing happened again, and the backyard would be noisy in a while. As expected, when Di Yan came back from outside, he heard that his concubine's unborn child was lost again. He stamped his feet in anger and came to find Qin Yuru. Mei Shui just came out from inside with a basin of water in her hand. Seeing Di Yan coming over with a livid face, she hurriedly greeted him respectfully, "Child, get out." Di Yan waved his hand and the basin of water was knocked to the ground. Mei Shui was so scared that she took 2 steps back, and half of her body was still wet. Di Yan stormed into the inner room in anger. When he saw Qin Yuru leaning on the bed, the blue veins on his forehead twitched fiercely. He kicked over a spring stool in front of him and said, "Qin Yuru, is it you again?" Qin Yuru, who was pretending to sleep on the bed, opened her eyes and looked at Di Yan coldly. She stared at Di Yan coldly and then sneered, "Di Yan, what you said is really funny. I'm recuperating here and there are only a few people in this house. Why are you pushing everything to me? Tell me, what happened this time?" Di Yan's eyes were cold as he stared at Di Yan. "Qin Yuru, Don't think that you are not you even if you don't admit it. Di Yen pointed at Qin Yuru and said harshly. Now he had become a thin young man, but he looked a little gloomy. At first glance, it was obvious that he had been stained with too many women, and his eye bags were also very swollen. He looked like he had been drinking too much. Di Yen, you pushed my child away. Do you still think you are in the right? How dare you come to me to make trouble? Well, let's go and make it clear now whether you are in the wrong or I am. If grandmother is biased to protect you, I will kill myself in front of your hall. Then you can marry another good wife as soon as possible and give birth to more sons for your family. Qin Yuru retorted sarcastically. She had no illusions about Di Yen now, and she did not expect Di Yen to like her. You are really a vicious woman? Di Yen was angry and anxious, but he did not dare to go against her. He stamped his feet hard and said, You will definitely get what you deserve. Looking at Qin Yuru's current appearance, he really did not dare to go against her. I am a vicious woman. If it were not for you, how could I become like this? You really treat a concubine as a treasure. Even if he is born, he is just a concubine. Do you want to treat him as a legitimate son? Qin Yuru sneered and grabbed the corner of the quilt with both hands. I am going to talk to grandmother, Di Yen said angrily. Go quickly. You are not a human if you don't go, Qin Yuru said stubbornly. Di Yen was so angry that he could not even say a word. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He pointed at Qin Yuru and was so angry that he kicked the leg of the table beside him. The teapot and teacups on the table jumped up and some of them rolled to the ground, making a crisp sound of breaking. Before Qin Yuru said anything, Di Yen turned around and left. He was going to tell grandmother now that he could not go on living like this. He must divorce this vicious woman, or he would not come back to this family. When he inquired just now, he already knew that it was Qin Yuru's maid, Mei Shui, who stirred up this matter. If it was not Qin Yuru's idea, concubine Tao would not know that there was a new prostitute. Moreover, when she went to make trouble, she would not coincidentally fall to the ground and even lose her child. It was all Qin Yuru's vicious plan. Madam. Seeing Di Yen leave, Mei Yen and Mei Shui hurriedly ran in with pale faces. Humph, even if he went to find grandmother, so what? If it gets out, I will not let them get away with it. Qin Yuru snorted coldly with a vicious look. She was ruined now. No one in Duke Yong's mansion could get away with it. Young madam, I have something to report to you. Suddenly, an old maid's voice came from outside the room. The three of them were stunned for a moment. Qin Yuru gestured to the two maids. Mei Shui walked out and saw a strange old maid at the door. She could not help frowning and asked unhappily, Who are you? Why are you looking for young madam? I am looking for young madam. I have something important to tell you. I am a servant of young madam's dowry shop. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.